I stood frozen in my brother Marcus's marble foyer, his words echoing in my ears. Sit by the trash where you fit. 7 years of paying his bills, funding his lifestyle, believing his promises of repayment once his business took off. Now surrounded by his wealthy friends at his company launch party, he publicly humiliated me for asking about the $40,000 he owed. The champagne glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. That was the moment everything changed. The sound of breaking glass silenced the room for exactly 3 seconds before Marcus's laughter filled the space. "Someone get my sister a broom," he announced to his guests. "She's finally found her calling." The beautiful people around him chuckled politely, their diamonds catching the chandelier light as they shifted uncomfortably. I felt my cheeks burn, but not from embarrassment anymore. This was rage, pure and crystalline. 24 hours ago, I would have cleaned up that mess. 24 hours ago, I still believed in the story we'd been living since we were children in suburban Detroit. Marcus had always been our parents' golden child, the star quarterback with the 1,000-watt smile who could charm his way through any situation. Every report card that came home was a celebration of his charisma, his leadership potential, his natural ability to win people over. Mine came with quiet nods and practical comments about my aptitude for mathematics and computer science. "Terry's our little genius," Dad would say, ruffling my hair. "She'll keep the books straight when Marcus runs his empire." Even then, the roles were assigned. Marcus would conquer the world, and I would manage the details behind the scenes. The memories flooded back as I stood in that foyer feeling the weight of every sacrifice I'd made. After our parents died in that horrible accident 5 years ago, everything shifted. The funeral was barely over when Marcus pulled me aside in the cemetery parking lot. His eyes were red, and for the first time in years, he looked vulnerable. "It's just us now, Terry," he'd said, gripping my shoulders. "We have to stick together. Family is everything." Those words became my gospel. When the life insurance check came through, addressed to me as the beneficiary, Marcus was there with a plan. "We'll use it strategically," he promised. "Invest in our future. I've got some ideas that could really take off, but I need seed money." It started small, almost reasonable. His rent was due, and his mourning had affected his work performance. "Just this month," he assured me. "Once I get back on my feet, I'll pay you back with interest." The next month, it was his car payment. Then came the investment opportunities, each one more crucial than the last. I transferred the money every time, watching my parents' legacy drain away, while telling myself I was honoring their memory by keeping our family united. My job as a software engineer paid well, but not well enough to sustain 2 lives. I moved from my nice apartment to a studio on the wrong side of town. I canceled my gym membership, stopped buying new clothes, ate ramen for dinner more nights than I care to remember. Meanwhile, Marcus's life seemed to improve with each payment. His apartments grew larger, his cars more expensive, his clothes transitioning from department store to designer. "It's all about image," he explained during one of his rare visits to my cramped studio. "You have to project success to achieve success. Don't worry, when my ship comes in, you'll be my first investor to get paid back." But tonight, standing in his mansion that my money had helped build, watching him mock me in front of his society friends, something inside me snapped. The glass shards at my feet reflected the light like tiny mirrors, and in each fragment, I saw a different moment of exploitation. The time he needed $3,000 for a can't-miss investment that disappeared without explanation. The $5,000 for a business course he never completed. The $10,000 for starting capital that funded nothing but parties and designer suits. "You know what, Marcus?" I heard myself say, my voice cutting through his laughter. "You're absolutely right. I don't belong here." I stepped carefully around the broken glass, my worn flats contrasting sharply with the marble floor. "But not because I'm trash, because I'm done being your personal ATM." The room fell silent. Marcus's jaw tightened, a tell I recognized from childhood when things weren't going his way. "Terry, you're being dramatic. This is a party. We can discuss family business later." family business. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you call taking $40,000 from me over the years? Is that what you call living off my work while treating me like the help? His guests began to shift toward the exits, suddenly interested in examining the artwork on the walls or checking their phones. Marcus's carefully constructed image was cracking, and he knew it. "You gave me that money," he hissed, stepping closer. "I never forced you." "No," I agreed. "You just manipulated me with Mom and Dad's memory. You used my grief and my love for you as weapons." I pulled out my phone, bringing up the spreadsheet I'd been maintaining. Every transfer, every payment, every broken promise. It's all here. But as I showed him the screen, something else caught my eye. An email notification popped up from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line made my blood run cold. "You need to see what your brother has been hiding." I opened it right there in front of everyone. Attached was another spreadsheet, but this one wasn't mine. It was dated 2 months before our parents' death, and the file name was Terry Asset Management Plan. My hands shook as I opened it. There, in Marcus's distinctive formatting, was a detailed breakdown of my financial situation, my projected inheritance, and a month-by-month plan for extracting money from me after our parents were gone. The worst part, there were notes analyzing my personality, identifying my weaknesses. Terry's need for family approval. One cell read, guilt over being the favored child academically. Another said, play up Mom and Dad's dream of us working together. I looked up at Marcus, whose face had gone pale. He could see his own spreadsheet reflected in my glasses. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my brother's eyes. "You planned this," I whispered. "Before they even died, you were planning to use me." The room emptied as if someone had pulled a fire alarm. Even Marcus's closest associates wanted no part of this revelation. Within minutes, it was just the two of us in that massive foyer, the broken champagne glass between us like a line drawn in the sand. "Terry, I can explain," he began, but I was already walking toward the door. "No," I said, pausing at the threshold. "You can't, but I can, and I will." As I stepped out into the night air, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 5 years' freedom. The brother I'd loved, protected, and sacrificed for had never existed. The man in that house was a stranger who'd worn my brother's face while picking my pockets and planning my financial destruction before our parents' bodies were even cold. But he'd made one crucial mistake in his meticulous planning. He'd underestimated me. Marcus thought he was the empire builder, the one destined for greatness. He never realized that while he was learning to manipulate, I was learning to build. While he was taking, I was creating. And now with that damning spreadsheet in my possession, I had the first piece of evidence I needed to bring his house of cards tumbling down. The $40,000 he'd taken from me was nothing compared to what he was about to lose. As I walked to my beat-up car, my phone buzzed with another message from the unknown sender. "This is just the beginning. There's more where that came from. Coffee tomorrow." I typed back a single word, "Yes." My hands were still trembling as I sat in my car outside Marcus's mansion. The anonymous email glowed on my phone screen, that spreadsheet burning into my retinas. I wanted to drive away to process what I'd just discovered, but my phone rang before I could start the engine. It was Sarah Chen, my best friend, and the only person at that party who actually cared about me. "Terry, wait." Her voice was breathless. I looked up to see her running toward my car in her designer heels, her forensic accountant instincts probably already cataloging every financial red flag she'd witnessed. Sarah had tried to warn me about Marcus for years, but I'd always defended him. Family loyalty had made me blind. She slipped into the passenger seat, immediately kicking off her shoes. "That was brutal," she said softly. "Are you okay?" "Did you see the email?" I showed her my phone. Sarah's expression shifted from concern to professional interest as she studied the spreadsheet. Her fingers flew across my phone screen, zooming in on different sections. "This is meticulous," she murmured. "The formulas, the projections, the psychological analysis. Your brother missed his calling as a financial predator. Wait, what's this? She pointed to a series of entries near the bottom. Project Terry Code Harvest. What does that mean? My stomach dropped. Over the past 3 years, I'd shared dozens of my personal coding projects with Marcus, thinking he was taking an interest in my work. He'd ask thoughtful questions, request demonstrations, even offer suggestions. I'd been so grateful for his attention that I never questioned why he wanted copies of my source code. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, glancing nervously at the mansion. "My place, now. There's something about Marcus's company that's been bothering me, and after tonight, I think you need to know." 20 minutes later, we sat in Sarah's home office surrounded by monitors and financial documents. She'd changed into jeans and pulled her hair into a ponytail, transforming from party guest to financial detective. I watched her fingers fly across the keyboard, pulling up incorporation documents, patent filings, and social media posts. "Your brother's company, Neural Sync Solutions, appeared out of nowhere 6 months ago," she explained. "No beta testing, no development period, no team building phase. Just suddenly, a fully formed tech company with sophisticated software products." She pulled up the company website. "Look at their flagship product." My heart stopped. Their dressed up with a slick interface and marketing speak was my distributed processing algorithm. I'd spent 2 years perfecting it, sharing every breakthrough with Marcus, because he'd seemed so proud of my work. The code was modified, optimized differently, but the core logic was unmistakably mine. "There's more," Sarah said grimly. She opened another tab showing patent applications. 6 patents filed under Neural Sync Solutions, every single one based on concepts from your GitHub repositories. "He didn't just steal your code, Terry. He's trying to own it legally." The room spun slightly. Those projects represented thousands of hours of work innovations that could have launched my own career. "How did I not see this?" I whispered. "Because you trusted him," Sarah said simply. "But look at this." She pulled up a social media post from 3 weeks ago. Marcus at a tech conference presenting to a room full of investors. The slide behind him showed my neural network architecture, the one I designed for my master's thesis. The worst part, Sarah clicked to another image. "Look who his lead investor is." The blood drained from my face. There, shaking hands with Marcus in a professional photo, was Ryan Fitzgerald, my ex-boyfriend. The man I'd been planning to start a company with until Marcus convinced me Ryan was using me, that he'd never see me as an equal partner, that he was threatened by my intelligence. I'd broken up with Ryan 2 years ago, devastating both of us because I'd believed my brother's poison. "This can't be a coincidence," I said, my mind racing. Marcus deliberately sabotaged my relationship with Ryan, then went into business with him. Sarah pulled up investment documents she'd somehow accessed. Ryan's firm, Fitzgerald Ventures, put in $2 million. But look at the terms. He owns 40% of the company. That's unusually high for a Series A investment. It's like he demanded extra equity for some reason. "We need to talk to Ryan," I decided. "Tonight." "Terry, it's past midnight," Sarah protested, but she was already pulling up his information. "Although, he's probably still at his office. The man works more than anyone I know." As we prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with another email from the anonymous sender. This time, it was a video file. I clicked play and saw Marcus in what looked like a bar, clearly drunk, talking to someone off camera. The audio was crystal clear. "The beauty of it," Marcus slurred, "is that Terry thinks she's so smart, but she never sees the obvious. I've been collecting her work for years. Every algorithm, every innovation, every breakthrough. She just hands it over because I'm family." He laughed, an ugly sound. "Ryan Fitzgerald thinks he's investing in my genius. Wait until I tell him the truth after the IPO. Maybe I'll hire Terry as a junior developer, let her work on her own code without knowing it." Sarah and I exchanged glances. "Who's sending these?" she asked. "I don't know, but they clearly want Marcus exposed, and right now they're my best ally." The drive to Ryan's office felt like traveling back in time. Fitzgerald Ventures occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all-glass and steel ambition. 2 years ago, Ryan and I would work late here, dreaming of the company we'd build together. Now I was returning as a victim of fraud about to expose my brother's deception. The security guard recognized me, his eyes widening. "Ms. Terry, Mr. Fitzgerald said you might come by eventually. You can go right up." My heart pounded as the elevator climbed. Ryan had expected me. The doors opened to reveal an office still blazing with light. Ryan stood by the windows, his back to us, seemingly staring out at the city lights. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, looking exactly as he had during our late-night planning sessions. "Hello, Terry," he said without turning around. "I've been waiting for this conversation for 2 years. You knew—" I stepped out of the elevator, Sarah close behind me. "You knew Marcus stole my code." Ryan finally turned, and the anger in his eyes made me step back. But it wasn't directed at me. I suspected the moment he pitched me. The architecture was too sophisticated, too elegant to be his work. It had your fingerprints all over it. He gestured to a chair. "Sit, please. There's a lot you need to know." "Then why did you invest?" I demanded, remaining standing. "Why give him $2 million for my work?" "Because it was the only way to protect you," Ryan said quietly, "and to gather evidence. Your brother isn't just a thief, Terry. He's part of something much bigger." "What do you mean?" Sarah interjected, her accountant instincts on high alert. Ryan walked to his desk and pulled out a thick folder. "6 months ago, Marcus approached me out of nowhere. He knew exactly how to play me, mentioning you just enough to twist the knife. He said you'd spoken highly of my investment strategies before you'd come to your senses about me." His voice was bitter. But something felt off. The technology was too advanced, his knowledge too shallow. So I did some digging. He spread documents across the desk. Financial records, email chains, corporate structures. Marcus is running the same con with 3 other investors, each one connected to someone whose work he's stolen. It's a pattern. He targets people with technical skills, but limited business experience, usually family or close friends. He isolates them, takes their work, then uses their personal connections to secure funding. "How many victims?" I asked, sinking into a chair as the scope hit me. "At least 7 that I've found. But here's the thing, I don't think Marcus is the mastermind. He's too sloppy, too arrogant. Someone else is pulling the strings, teaching him these techniques." My phone buzzed. Another message from Anonymous. "You're getting warmer. Check the elevator camera at 11:47 p.m. Ryan's computer had access to the building's security system. He pulled up the footage. There, entering the elevator just minutes after we'd arrived, was a woman I didn't recognize. Professional suit, confident stride, and eyes that seemed to look directly at the camera as if she knew we'd be watching. "Who is she?" I asked. Ryan's expression was grim. "That's Jennifer Walsh. Officially, she's Marcus's girlfriend. Unofficially, she's been asking a lot of questions about his business. I think she's your anonymous source." "Why would Marcus's girlfriend help me?" I was struggling to keep up with the revelations. "Because," Ryan said, pulling up another document, "Jennifer Walsh isn't just a girlfriend. According to my sources, she's got connections to federal law enforcement. Your brother may have bitten off more than he can chew." The elevator dinged behind us. We all turned as Jennifer Walsh stepped out, looking exactly as composed as she had in the security footage. "Good evening," she said calmly. "I believe we have a mutual interest in exposing Marcus Mitchell. And if we're going to bring down his entire operation, we're going to need to work together." She set a laptop on Ryan's desk and opened it to reveal hundreds of files, photos, documents, audio recordings. "I've been investigating your brother for 8 months. What he did to you, Terry, is just the tip of the iceberg. He's part of a network that's stolen millions in intellectual property from family members across the country." I stared at the screen, seeing case after case of exploitation. Brothers, sisters, children, parents, all betrayed by family members who'd been taught to see them as resources to be harvested. "But here's the good news," Jennifer continued, her eyes meeting mine. "Your code is traceable. Every algorithm has a signature, and yours is particularly distinctive. We can prove he stole it. More importantly, we can use neural sync solutions as bait to catch the entire network." "Who are you really?" Sarah demanded. "FBI SEC." Jennifer smiled slightly. Let's just say I'm someone who specializes in financial crimes with a technical component, and Marcus Mitchell just became my key to dismantling an entire fraud ring. I looked around the room at this unlikely alliance. My best friend, my ex-boyfriend, and a mysterious investigator. 3 hours ago, I'd been humiliated and alone. Now I had a team and a chance not just for justice, but to save others from what I'd experienced. "What do you need from me?" I asked. Jennifer's smile widened. "Access to your original code repository's documentation of every interaction with Marcus and your help in understanding exactly how your algorithms work. We're going to prove that Neural Sync Solutions is built entirely on stolen technology. Then we're going to use that proof to bring down everyone involved." "And Marcus," I couldn't help asking, "your brother is about to learn what happens when you build an empire on someone else's foundation," Ryan said quietly. "It collapses completely." As we began planning our next moves, I realized the $40,000 Marcus had taken was nothing compared to what he'd tried to steal. My ideas, my future, my relationships, he'd tried to take everything that made me who I was. But he'd failed to understand the most important thing about code. Every program leaves Trace's digital fingerprints that can't be erased. And now with every line he'd stolen, he'd created a trail leading directly back to the truth. The brother who'd told me to sit by the trash where I fit had accidentally handed me the keys to his kingdom. He just didn't know it yet. The next morning arrived too quickly. I'd barely slept, my mind churning through everything we'd discovered. Jennifer had left us with encrypted files and a meeting time for later that day. Ryan had offered to let me crash in the office's rest area, but I'd needed to go home to process everything in my own space. My studio apartment felt even smaller after the revelations of the night. I sat on my secondhand couch laptop, open, going through my code repositories. Every project I'd excitedly shared with Marcus over the years now felt like evidence of my naivety. But as I reviewed them, I noticed something odd. Recent access logs showed logins from IP addresses I didn't recognize, all traced back to times when Marcus had visited. My phone rang. Ryan's name appeared on the screen, and my heart did a complicated dance of old feelings and new realities. "Can we meet?" His voice was careful, professional. "Just the two of us. There's something about Marcus's pitch to me that you need to hear." An hour later, I sat across from Ryan at our old coffee shop. The familiar surroundings made the conversation even more surreal. He looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying secrets too long. When Marcus first approached me, Ryan began stirring his coffee absently. He knew exactly what buttons to push. "He told me you'd said I was too controlling, that I'd never see you as an equal in business. He claimed you'd called me emotionally manipulative." The words hit like physical blows. "Ryan, I never said any of that. Marcus told me you thought I was too naive for the business world, that you were planning to steal my ideas once we launched our startup." "I know that now." His laugh was bitter. "But 6 months ago, I was still angry, hurt. When he showed me his technology, part of me wanted to believe it was his. But the architecture was so clearly yours. The elegant solutions, the way the code seemed to dance, it was like reading your poetry." "Is that why you demanded 40% equity?" "Partially. I told myself I was protecting the investment, but honestly, I think I was trying to stay connected to you somehow. Pathetic, right?" He met my eyes for the first time. "I hired a private investigator after the deal closed. That's how I learned about the pattern about the other victims. I've been building a case ever since." "Why didn't you warn me?" "I tried." He pulled out his phone, showing me dozens of unsent messages. "But what would I say? Hey, Terry, I know your brother made you hate me, but he's stealing from you. You would have thought I was the manipulative ex trying to cause family drama." He had a point. 6 months ago, I would have chosen Marcus's word over anyone's. The conditioning had run that deep. "There's something else," Ryan continued. "In Marcus's pitch deck, he had projected revenues based on contracts with companies I recognized. They were all your clients from your freelance work. I did some digging and found shell companies, forged contracts, redirected payments. He's been intercepting your client communications for at least a year. My blood ran cold. I'd noticed some clients had stopped responding, but I'd assumed they'd found other developers. How much? Based on the contracts, I could verify about $300,000 in diverted payments, maybe more. $300,000. I'd been eating ramen while Marcus lived in luxury off my work. The betrayal cut deeper with each revelation. I need to show you something, Ryan said, pulling out a folder. This is why I wanted to meet privately. My business partner, Derek, introduced me to someone a few months ago, someone who claimed to have information about Marcus's operation. He slid a photo across the table. It showed a woman I'd seen at Marcus's parties, elegant, always on his arm, laughing at his jokes. That's Brittany, Marcus's ex-girlfriend from last year. I remember her. Marcus said she was too clingy, too emotional. She's also a forensic accountant who tried to warn him about irregularities in his books. When she questioned him, he destroyed her reputation in their social circle. Sound familiar? The pattern was becoming clearer. Marcus didn't just steal money and code, he destroyed anyone who might expose him. Brittany now works for my firm, Ryan continued. She's been helping us trace the financial web, but yesterday after your confrontation with Marcus, she received a threatening message. Someone doesn't want us digging deeper. Who's behind this? I asked. Jennifer mentioned a larger network. That's what we're trying to figure out. But Brittany found something interesting. Marcus has a silent partner who's been funding him since before your parents died. The money trail leads to offshore accounts, but there's a connection to someone in your family's past. Before I could ask more, my phone buzzed. Sarah was calling frantically. Terry, where are you? Marcus just showed up at your apartment building. The landlord called me because you listed me as an emergency contact. He's demanding to be let into your unit. Don't let him in, I said, already standing. Call the police if necessary. Already done, but Terry, he had someone with him, an older man who looked familiar. Ryan was already grabbing his keys. We'll meet you there. The drive to my apartment was tense. Ryan filled the silence with more revelations about Marcus's financial manipulations, but my mind was on who this older man might be. Someone from our family's past who'd been funding Marcus even before our parents' death. When we arrived, police cars were already outside. Marcus stood by his Tesla gesticulating wildly to an officer, while an older man waited in the passenger seat. Even from a distance, something about the man's profile tugged at my memory. Sarah ran over as we parked. The police made them leave your apartment alone, but Marcus is claiming he has a right to retrieve his property. He says you stole confidential business documents. The only thing I have is evidence of his theft, I said, but then I remembered the anonymous emails. Had Marcus figured out I was receiving inside information? As we approached, the older man stepped out of the Tesla. My breath caught. It was Dennis Mitchell, our estranged uncle, who'd been excommunicated from the family when I was 12. I barely remembered why something about a business deal that went wrong, money that disappeared. Hello, Terry, Dennis said smoothly. He looked like an older, harder version of Marcus. Same calculating eyes, same predatory smile. You've grown up. Last time I saw you, you were debugging your first program. Uncle Dennis. The pieces were clicking into place. You're Marcus's silent partner. Partner is such a limited term, Dennis replied. I prefer to think of myself as a mentor. Your brother had raw talent but needed guidance. I've been teaching him how to leverage assets effectively. You mean teaching him how to steal from family? Dennis laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Steal, I taught him to recognize opportunity. You were sitting on gold mines of code, letting your talents waste away in corporate servitude. Marcus simply redirected those assets to their highest and best use. My work isn't an asset to be redirected, I said, anger building. It's mine. Such a limited view, Dennis tisked. Your parents had the same problem, always talking about fairness and equality instead of maximizing potential. If they'd listened to me, they'd have been wealthy. Instead, you stole from them. I said, the old memory suddenly clear. That's why Dad cut you off. You embezzled from their business. Embezzled is a strong word. I relocated funds to more profitable ventures, much like Marcus has done with your intellectual property. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You should be proud, Terry. Your code is about to make us millions. After the IPO next month, Neural Sync Solutions will be valued at $50 million minimum. Your algorithms will finally achieve their potential. Those algorithms have my digital signature embedded in every function, I said. When this comes out, your IPO will be worthless. Dennis's smile widened. Which is why you're going to sign this. He pulled out a document. A retroactive work-for-hire agreement. Sign it and we'll pay you a consultant fee of $50,000. Refuse and things get complicated. Complicated how? Marcus finally spoke up, his earlier panic replaced by smugness. Remember all those times you used my laptop to code all those projects you worked on at my place? My security system has footage of you creating that code on my property, using my resources. Our lawyers say that gives us a strong claim to joint ownership. That's ridiculous, Ryan interjected. No court would uphold that. Maybe not. Dennis agreed. But the legal battle would take years, cost hundreds of thousands, destroy Terry's reputation in the tech world. Meanwhile, we proceed with the IPO, make our millions, and she gets nothing. Or she signs this paper, takes the money, and everyone wins. I looked at the document. Signing it would legitimize every theft, every lie, every manipulation. It would mean letting them profit from my work while I got pennies on the dollar. You have 24 hours, Marcus said. After that, we file our lawsuit and begin the process of destroying your career. You think being told to sit by the trash hurt. Wait until every tech company in the country knows you as the engineer who tried to steal from her own brother's company. They got back in the Tesla and drove away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with Sarah and Ryan. The document felt like poison in my hands. You're not considering signing that, Sarah said. Of course not. I turned to Ryan. But they're right about one thing. A legal battle could destroy me. Only if we play by their rules, Ryan said thoughtfully. But what if we don't? What if we use their own IPO against them? My phone buzzed. Jennifer Walsh. Just saw the security footage of your uncle's visit. Dennis Mitchell is the key to everything. Meet me tonight. Bring everything you have on your family history. It's time you learned what really happened to your parents. I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine. What did Jennifer know about my parents' death? And how deep did Dennis's manipulation really go? Change of plans, I told Ryan and Sarah. We're not playing defense anymore. If Dennis and Marcus want to threaten me with destruction, then let's see how they handle having their entire house of cards exposed, starting with whatever Dennis has been hiding about my family. As we walked back to the cars, I crumpled the work-for-hire agreement. 24 hours. They'd given me 24 hours to sign my life's work away. Instead, I'd use that time to uncover every secret, every lie, every crime they'd committed. The little sister who'd been told to sit by the trash was about to show them what happened when you underestimated a software engineer with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Jennifer's meeting location surprised me, a nondescript office building in the financial district, the kind that housed dozens of small firms and consultancies. Sarah, Ryan, and I took the elevator to the 14th floor, where a simple placard read, Walsh Financial Investigations. Jennifer met us at the door, her professional demeanor intact, despite the late hour. Come in. What I'm about to show you changes everything. Her office was a war room. Whiteboards covered every wall, filled with financial flowcharts, timelines, and photographs connected by colored string. At the center was Marcus's picture, but spreading out from him like a spider web were dozens of other faces, other connections. I've been investigating your brother for 8 months. Jennifer began gesturing to the boards, but not because he's dating me. That's my cover. I'm actually a consultant for the FBI's white-collar crime division, specializing in intellectual property theft within families. She handed us her real credentials: Jennifer Walsh, Financial Crimes Specialist. Your brother is part of a network we've been tracking for 3 years, she continued. They call themselves the Harvesters. They identify families with one technically gifted member and one charismatic member, then teach the charismatic one how to systematically extract intellectual property from their relative. How many victims? I asked, studying the faces on the wall. 47 confirmed so far. Combined losses of over $200 million in stolen IP, diverted contracts, and fraudulent companies. Your case, Terry, is one of the most sophisticated we've seen. Jennifer pulled up a presentation on her laptop. The Harvesters recruit people like Marcus at business seminars, networking events, anywhere ambitious people gather. They look for specific traits, narcissistic tendencies, family members in tech, and most importantly, a sense of entitlement. And Dennis is part of this network? Ryan asked. Dennis Mitchell isn't just part of it, Jennifer said. He's one of the founding members. He's been perfecting these techniques for 20 years, ever since he was disowned by your family. She clicked to the next slide, a photo of Dennis from 2 decades ago, standing with 4 other people. These are the original Harvesters. They started by targeting their own families, then began recruiting and training others. It's a pyramid scheme, but instead of selling products, they're selling manipulation techniques. Why hasn't the FBI arrested them? Sarah demanded. Because until now, we couldn't prove coordination. Each case looked like isolated family fraud. Brothers stealing from sisters, children from parents, cousins from cousins. Tragic but individual crimes. Your brother's IPO changes that. Jennifer pulled up financial documents. Neural Sync Solutions is the first company built entirely on Harvester techniques to attempt going public. They're getting greedy, sloppy. Every investor, every filing, every contract creates a paper trail. And because multiple Harvester victims' work is incorporated into the company's products, it's become a nexus of evidence. Wait, I said, something clicking. Multiple victims Marcus stole from others too. 3 others that we've identified. The machine learning protocols came from a woman in Seattle whose son convinced her to share her research. The database architecture originated with a programmer in Phoenix whose sister gained access to his work. The integration framework belonged to a developer in Boston whose cousin spent years collecting his code. My stomach turned. My work was just one ingredient in Marcus's stolen recipe. These other victims, do they know? Not yet. We needed someone on the inside to come forward first. Your confrontation with Marcus last night triggered our next phase. Jennifer smiled grimly. You see, I've been recording every conversation with Marcus for months, including one where he bragged about the family resources he'd harvested. She played an audio file. Marcus's voice filled the room, drunk and boastful. The beauty of family is they want to trust you. Terry practically threw her coat at me. She was so desperate for approval after Mom and Dad died. Dennis taught me that grief is a vulnerability to be exploited. Create dependency, isolate them from outside validation, then take everything while making them feel grateful for the attention. Hearing his casual cruelty made me physically ill. Sarah put a comforting hand on my shoulder. There's more, Jennifer said gently. This next part is harder. It's about your parents. She pulled up a police report from 5 years ago, my parents' car accident. I'd read it dozens of times, memorizing every detail of that horrible night. The official cause was brake failure during rain, Jennifer said. But look at this maintenance record I found. She showed a document from 2 weeks before the accident, a mechanic's invoice for brake work paid for by Dennis Mitchell. That's not possible, I whispered. Dennis wasn't in our lives then. Dad had cut him off. Publicly, yes, but Dennis had been approaching your parents about a reconciliation for months. He claimed to have a business opportunity that would secure your futures. Your parents were considering it, especially with you and Marcus, both starting careers. Jennifer pulled up email records between my parents and Dennis. My mother's words jumped out. Dennis seems changed, Robert. Maybe we should give him another chance, for the children's sake. 2 days before the accident, Jennifer continued, Your parents told Dennis they'd decided against his proposal. They found out he was still running cons, still exploiting families. They were planning to warn others about him. The implication hung in the air, too terrible to voice. Ryan broke the silence. You're suggesting Dennis murdered them. I'm saying the FBI is reopening the investigation based on new evidence. Dennis had means, motive, and opportunity. More importantly, we have a witness. Who? Marcus's former assistant, Kelly Martinez. She worked for him for 6 months before quitting. Before she left, she copied files, including communications between Marcus and Dennis, dating back to before your parents' death. In one email, Dennis writes, "Once the obstacles are removed, you'll have access to everything. Be patient." I couldn't breathe. The room spun. My parents hadn't just died, they might have been murdered to give Marcus access to my inheritance, my trust, my work. Kelly's been in protective custody, Jennifer explained, but she's willing to testify. She also has this. She handed me a flash drive. Every piece of intellectual property Marcus stole, including original timestamps, proving your authorship. Kelly collected it all, hoping someone would eventually seek justice. Why didn't she come forward sooner? Sarah asked. Because Marcus threatened her family. He had connections through Dennis to make those threats real. But with the FBI involved and multiple victims coming forward, she finally feels safe enough to speak. I held the flash drive, this small device containing proof of years of theft and possibly murder. What happens now? Now we build an airtight case. The IPO filing deadline is in 3 weeks. Marcus needs to submit final documentation, including proof of ownership for all intellectual property. That's when we strike. But they gave me 24 hours to sign that work-for-hire agreement, I reminded her. Jennifer smiled, and it was sharp as a blade. Then we have 24 hours to gather enough evidence to make signing that document irrelevant. By tomorrow night, Marcus and Dennis won't be worried about an IPO. They'll be worried about federal charges. What do you need from us? Ryan asked. Everything. Financial records code, repositories, communications, memories of conversations. We're going to map out every theft, every manipulation, every crime. Terry, I'll need you to verify the code attribution. Sarah, your forensic accounting skills will help trace the money. Ryan, your investment records and correspondence with Marcus are crucial. She turned back to the wall of victims. But most importantly, we need to contact the others. If we can get even half of these people to come forward to show the pattern, the Harvesters network collapses. No more families destroyed, no more dreams stolen. I stood facing the wall of photographs. Each face represented someone like me, someone who'd trusted family, who'd shared their gifts freely, who'd been betrayed by those they loved most. But looking closer, I saw something else in their eyes. Resilience, strength, survival. Let's do it, I said. Let's bring them all down. Jennifer nodded approvingly. There's one more thing. Dennis is probably monitoring your communications, possibly even your apartment. From now on, assume you're being watched. We'll use encrypted channels for everything important. She handed each of us a secure phone. These are loaded with encrypted messaging apps. Use them for anything related to the case. Your regular phones are for normal communication only. Let Dennis and Marcus think you're scared considering their offer. Should I respond to the work-for-hire agreement? I asked. Yes. Tell them you need the full 24 hours to decide. Keep them confident. Meanwhile, we'll be dismantling their empire piece by piece. As we prepared to leave, Jennifer pulled me aside. Terry, what you're about to do takes incredible courage. Facing family betrayal, potentially learning your parents were murdered, most people would crumble. But you're not most people. You're a survivor. And soon you'll be a warrior for everyone else who's been hurt like this. Walking out into the night, I felt the weight of the flash drive in my pocket and the burden of truth on my shoulders. In 24 hours, I was supposed to sign away my life's work. Instead, in 24 hours, I'd help expose a criminal network that had destroyed dozens of families. Marcus had told me to sit by the trash where I fit. He never realized that sometimes the most valuable things end up discarded. And sometimes, those discarded things come back stronger, ready to reclaim everything that was stolen and more. Sarah's apartment became our command center for the night. Her dining room table disappeared under laptops, printed documents, and empty coffee cups. The secure phones Jennifer had given us buzzed constantly with updates from her team. Every revelation felt like peeling back another layer of an infected wound. "Look at this," Sarah said, her face illuminated by multiple monitor screens. She'd been tracing financial transactions for 3 hours straight, her forensic accounting skills, uncovering a labyrinth of shell companies and hidden transfers. Marcus didn't just steal Terry's client payments. He created an entire parallel business structure. She turned her laptop toward Ryan and me. The screen showed a complex web of companies all registered in different states, all leading back to anonymous LLCs in Delaware. TechFlow Solutions, Neural Innovations, CodeStream Dynamics. They're all Marcus. He's been operating as Terry through these companies for 2 years. How much, I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Based on the contracts, I can verify at least $800,000 in diverted payments, maybe more. Some of these clients think they've been working with you this entire time. 800,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been skipping meals to pay rent, Marcus had been stealing close to $1 million of my earnings. Ryan was working on his own laptop comparing the code in NeuralSync's products to my original repositories. "The theft is even more brazen than we thought," he said. "Marcus didn't just take your code. He's been monitoring your commits in real time. Look." He showed us a program running on what appeared to be a system administrator interface. This is from a screenshot Kelly Martinez provided. It's a keystroke logger and screen capture system. Every time you worked on your personal projects, Marcus could see everything. Every algorithm, every innovation, every breakthrough captured in real time. He's been spying on me for years. The violation felt worse than the financial theft. My creative process, my problem-solving moments, my digital soul all stolen without my knowledge. "Since at least 6 months after your parents died," Ryan confirmed. "The installation date corresponds to when he helped you set up your new development environment after your old laptop died." I remembered that day. I'd been so grateful when Marcus showed up with a new laptop, top of the line, far better than what I could afford. He'd spent hours setting it up, installing software optimizing settings. I'd thought it was brotherly love. Instead, he'd been planting surveillance tools. My secure phone buzzed. Jennifer had sent an encrypted message. "Found something massive. Check your email secured channel only." I opened the encrypted email app to find dozens of forwarded messages. They were from other victims Jennifer's team had contacted. The stories were heartbreakingly familiar. Trust, exploited work, stolen lives, destroyed by family members they'd loved. One stood out. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a biochemist whose daughter had stolen her revolutionary protein folding algorithms. The daughter had sold them to a pharmaceutical company for millions, while Elena struggled to pay for her husband's cancer treatment. Elena had attached proof lab notebooks, timestamp data, even video of herself developing the algorithms her daughter later claimed as her own. "She wants to help," Elena's message read. "I've stayed quiet out of shame and love for my daughter, but learning I'm not alone, that this was orchestrated, I want justice for all of us." More messages flooded in. A game developer whose brother stole an entire game engine. An architect whose cousin claimed credit for sustainable building designs. A musician whose sister sold his compositional algorithms to a major streaming service. Each story was different, but the pattern was identical: family members trained to see their relatives as resources to be harvested. Sarah's gasp interrupted my reading. "I found something. Remember that maintenance record Jennifer showed us? The mechanic who worked on your parents' car, I tracked down his business. It closed 6 months after the accident, but I found the owner." She pulled up a social media profile, an older man now living in Florida. "His name is Carl Hendricks. I messaged him and he responded immediately. He says he's been waiting 5 years for someone to ask about that brake job." "What did he say?" "He's willing to video call right now. He says he has something we need to see." We connected the call and Carl's weathered face appeared on screen. His eyes were haunted the look of someone carrying a heavy secret. "You're Robert and Linda's daughter," he said without preamble. "I can see it in your eyes. I'm sorry for your loss. Sorrier than you know." "What happened with my parents' car?" I asked. Carl looked away, then back at the camera. "Dennis Mitchell brought that car to me, said it was his needed routine maintenance. I didn't know it belonged to your parents until I saw the news. By then it was too late." "What did he ask you to do?" "Nothing that would cause an accident, just standard brake work. But here's the thing." He held up an old invoice. "After I finished, someone else worked on that car. My security camera caught it happening overnight. Someone modified my work." "Do you still have the footage?" "Better than that. I kept the old brake components I'd replaced, and the modification tools left behind. Been holding on to them knowing someday someone would come asking. The guilt's been eating me alive. Your parents were good people." Ryan leaned forward. "Would you testify to this?" "In a heartbeat. I may have been too scared to come forward 5 years ago, but I'm old now. Got nothing to lose and a conscience to clear." We exchanged contact information and Carl promised to send the physical evidence to Jennifer's team. Another piece of the puzzle, another nail in Dennis's coffin. The night wore on. We documented every theft, cross-referenced every timeline, built databases of evidence. The encrypted phones buzzed constantly with updates from Jennifer's growing network of victims and witnesses. Around 3 in the morning, I found something that made my blood run cold. Hidden in the metadata of files Marcus had stolen was evidence of future plans. Documents labeled Phase 3 Implementation outlined a scheme to frame me for corporate espionage once Neural Sync went public. "He was going to destroy me completely," I said, showing the others. "Look at this forged emails making it seem like I sold trade secrets to competitors. Fabricated financial records showing payments to my accounts from rival companies. He even created a fake trail suggesting I had gambling debts." Sarah's expression was grim. "This is beyond theft. This is character assassination. He wanted to ensure you could never credibly challenge him." "Or testify against him," Ryan added darkly. My regular phone rang jarring in the late-night quiet. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. I looked at the others and Sarah nodded, starting a recording app. "Hello, Marcus." "Terry. I hope you're being sensible about our offer." His voice was casual, confident. "Dennis and I are willing to be generous considering the circumstances." "I'm still thinking about it," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Good. Because I'd hate for things to get messy. You know, I've been going through some old files. Found some interesting things. Emails where you discussed selling our parents' house without consulting me. Messages where you complained about supporting me financially, called me a burden. Might be painful if those became public during a legal battle." "Those emails don't exist, Marcus." "Don't they? It's amazing what can be found in old backup files or created from fragments of real messages. You always did like to vent to Sarah. Who's to say what was real venting and what crossed into defamation?" The threat was clear. Sign or he'd manufacture evidence to destroy my reputation along with everything else. "I'll have an answer for you tomorrow," I said. "Smart girl. Oh, and Terry, I'd be careful about who you trust. That boyfriend of yours, Ryan, he's not as loyal as you think. Ask him about the meeting he had with Dennis last week." The line went dead. I looked at Ryan, whose face had gone pale. "I can explain," he said quickly. "Dennis approached me at a conference. I recorded the entire conversation for Jennifer. He tried to buy me off, offered me double my investment back if I'd stop helping you. I played along to gather information." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I gave the recording directly to Jennifer. We didn't want to worry you with every manipulation attempt. Here." He pulled out his secure phone, showing me the audio file he'd sent to Jennifer. "Listen to it. Dennis basically confessed to orchestrating everything, thinking he was recruiting me." I listened to the recording. Dennis's voice was oily with confidence as he explained how family loyalty was a weakness to be exploited, how love blinded people to opportunity. He offered Ryan not just money, but a position in their network training others in manipulation techniques. The only thing I said yes to was a follow-up meeting, Ryan said. Jennifer wanted me to wear a wire, get more evidence. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but we're all trying to protect you while building this case. Before I could respond, Sarah made a strangled sound. She'd been reviewing the spyware logs from my computer, tracing back through years of surveillance. Terry, she said slowly, I found something in the keystroke logs from 2 weeks before your parents' accident. You were writing an email to them about Dennis, warning them about his approach. She showed me the captured text, my own words from 5 years ago. Mom, Dad, please be careful. Something about Uncle Dennis feels wrong. The business opportunity he's offering, I looked into it. The companies he claims to represent don't exist. I think he's trying to con you. You tried to warn them, Ryan said softly. But look at this, Sarah continued. The email was intercepted, never sent. The spyware was already active and someone deleted it before it could reach your parents. There's an admin note, threat neutralized, proceeding with timeline. The implication was staggering. If I'd successfully warned my parents, they might have avoided Dennis entirely. They might still be alive. That's evidence of premeditation, Ryan said. They were monitoring you to prevent interference with their plan. My hands shook as I processed this information. The theft, the lies, the manipulation, all of it paled beside the possibility that my parents' death wasn't just convenient for Marcus and Dennis. It was planned. Jennifer's secure phone buzzed with a priority alert. Her message was brief but urgent. Major breakthrough. Dennis's former business partner just flipped. Has recordings, documents, proof of everything. The Harvester Network is panicking. They know we're coming. Be extremely careful. They're capable of anything. I looked around the table at my makeshift team, my best friend who'd stood by me, my ex-boyfriend who'd been gathering evidence even while I hated him, and the weight of dozens of victims counting on us for justice. 10 hours left until the deadline, I said. 10 hours to finish documenting everything. We'll make it, Sarah said firmly. Every keystroke he captured, every dollar he stole, every lie he told, it's all evidence now. His own surveillance system is going to convict him. As dawn approached, painting the sky outside Sarah's windows, I thought about Marcus's threat to make things messy. He had no idea how messy things were about to become. Every digital footprint he'd left, every trail he'd created while stalking my work, every record of his theft, it was all about to be exposed. The brother who'd built an empire on stolen code was about to learn a fundamental truth about programming garbage in, garbage out. And everything he'd built was garbage founded on lies and theft and possibly murder. In 10 hours, I wouldn't be signing away my rights. I'd be signing his arrest warrant with every piece of evidence we'd compiled. The digital trail he'd created while hunting my work would lead straight to his downfall. Exhaustion weighed on all of us as the sun rose fully. We'd been working for nearly 20 hours straight, but I couldn't rest, not with the deadline looming and so many questions unanswered. I needed to go home to shower and change to prepare for whatever came next. I'll come with you, Sarah offered, but I shook my head. I need an hour alone to process everything. I'll be careful. The drive to my parents' old house felt like traveling through time. I'd been paying the mortgage for 5 years, unable to let go of the place where we'd been a real family. Marcus had called me sentimental, said I was wasting money on a ghost. Now I wondered if he'd been trying to get me to sell so he could claim half the proceeds. I parked in the driveway looking at the 2-story colonial where I'd grown up. The garden was overgrown. I hadn't been here in months. Too many memories, too much pain. But now I needed something from this place. Maybe answers, maybe just peace. The key still worked smoothly in the lock. Inside, everything remained as I'd left it. Furniture covered in sheets, family photos on the mantel, Mom's piano in the corner gathering dust. I climbed the stairs to my parents' bedroom, each step echoing in the empty house. Their closet still smelled faintly of Mom's perfume and Dad's cologne. I'd been unable to clear it out, this last preserve of their presence. Marcus had mocked me for it, but he'd never offered to help. Now I understood why sentiment was weakness to him, something to exploit rather than share. Mom's jewelry box sat on the dresser where it always had. I opened it carefully, sorting through the modest collection. Her wedding ring, a pearl necklace from their anniversary, the silver bracelet I'd given her for her last birthday. At the bottom, my fingers found something unexpected, a sealed envelope with my name written in Mom's careful script. My heart stopped. I'd been through this jewelry box before. How would I miss this? The envelope was tucked into a hidden compartment I'd never noticed, triggered by pressing a small button inside the box. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a letter dated 1 week before the accident, and something else, a small key. My dearest Terry. The letter began, and I had to sit down on their bed to read it. If you're reading this, something has happened to your father and me. I pray I'm wrong, that I'm just being paranoid, but Dennis's return to our lives has filled me with dread. I can't shake. You tried to warn us about him, sweetheart. I know you sent that email. I saw you typing it before it mysteriously disappeared from your computer. That's when I knew Dennis had somehow gotten to Marcus, that the son I loved was already lost to his uncle's influence. I've watched the changes in Marcus over the past year. The casual cruelty, the manipulation, the way he looks at you not as a sister, but as a resource. It breaks my heart, but I can't ignore what I see. Dennis has poisoned him with promises of easy wealth and power. Your father and I have taken precautions. The key in this envelope opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank account number 4827. Inside, you'll find evidence we've gathered about Dennis's criminal activities, documentation of his approaches to us, and recordings of conversations where he tried to recruit Marcus into his business ventures. There's also something else, a trust fund we established in secret with Patricia Morrison as trustee. She's the only one we could trust with this. The fund contains enough money to protect you, to give you freedom from anyone who might try to control you through financial manipulation. We've also hired a private investigator to document Dennis's activities. His reports are in the safety deposit box. If something happens to us, take everything to the authorities. Don't let Dennis or Marcus convince you otherwise. I need you to know that you were never second best to us. Your quiet strength, your brilliant mind, your generous heart, you are everything we hoped for in a daughter. Marcus may have gotten more attention because he demanded it, but you, my darling girl, you got our deepest respect and trust. Be careful, Terry. Trust your instincts, and remember, sometimes the people who claim to love us are the ones capable of the greatest betrayal. Guard your gifts, share them wisely, and never let anyone make you feel small for being exactly who you are. All my love, Mom. P.S. Check the piano bench. I left something there for you. Tears streamed down my face as I read and reread her words. She'd known. She'd seen what was happening and tried to protect me. The timestamp on the letter meant she'd written it just days before the accident. Had Dennis somehow discovered their preparations? Is that what triggered their deaths? I practically flew down the stairs to the piano bench. Inside, beneath old sheet music, was another envelope. This one contained photographs Dennis meeting with Marcus at various locations, timestamps visible. One showed them at a restaurant 6 months before my parents died. Another at what looked like a bank. The final photo made my blood run cold. Dennis and Marcus outside the mechanic shop where my parents' car had been serviced. There was also a business card, Patricia Morrison, retired family court judge. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, "She knows everything, trust her. She's waiting for you to be ready." My phone rang. Sarah's panic was evident before she even spoke. "Terry, get out of there, now. Marcus just left his apartment and he's heading in your direction. Jennifer thinks Dennis is with him." "I found evidence," I said, already moving. "Mom knew everything. Tell me later, just get out. They're maybe 10 minutes away." I grabbed both envelopes, the jewelry box, and the photos. As I reached my car, another vehicle pulled up, but it wasn't Marcus. An elderly woman stepped out, her silver hair, elegant, her bearing judicial even in retirement. "Patricia Morrison," she said. Your mother told me that someday you'd find that letter. I've been watching the house, waiting. We need to talk, but not here. Follow me. My brother is coming. I know. I've been monitoring his movements for 5 years, just as I promised your parents. Follow me to my office. It's secure, and I have something else your mother left for you. I followed Patricia's car through suburban streets, constantly checking my mirrors for Marcus. We arrived at a small law office just as my phone exploded with calls from Marcus. I silenced it and followed Patricia inside. Her office was a fortress of filing cabinets and legal books. She locked the door behind us and activated what looked like a security system. Your parents were my closest friends. She began settling behind her desk. When Dennis reappeared in their lives, they came to me immediately. I helped them document everything, prepare protections for you. They knew Marcus was already compromised. The trust fund Mom mentioned. Patricia smiled sadly. $3 million properly invested for 5 years. It's yours whenever you need it. Your parents' liquidated assets Dennis didn't know about, wanted to ensure you'd never be financially vulnerable. They saw how Marcus was starting to treat you, how he manipulated your generosity. $3 million. While I'd been living on ramen while Marcus bled me dry, I'd had a safety net all along. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Your parents' instructions were clear. I was to wait until you either found the letter or came to me on your own. They believed you needed to see Marcus's true nature yourself to understand the danger without being pushed. They knew you loved your brother would resist believing the worst without proof. Do you have the private investigator's reports? Patricia pulled out a thick folder. Everything's here. Dennis Mitchell's 30-year history of fraud, his network of accomplices, his methods of operation. The investigator also documented Marcus's transformation, his meetings with Dennis, the plans they discussed. I flipped through the reports, seeing the truth laid out in clinical detail. Dennis had been grooming Marcus since he was 18, using their estrangement from the family as a cover. Every manipulation technique Marcus had used on me was documented in Dennis's previous cons. There's one more thing, Patricia said. She pulled out a tablet and opened a video file. Your parents recorded this a week before they died. They wanted you to have it if anything happened. My parents appeared on screen sitting in this very office. They looked tired but determined. Terry, sweetheart, Mom said to the camera. If you're watching this, then our worst fears have come true. We want you to know that we're taking steps to protect you, but more importantly, we need you to understand that none of this is your fault. Dad leaned forward. Marcus has chosen his path. Dennis has shown him a way to wealth that requires no real work, no creation, only taking from others. We've tried to reach him to show him the error, but he's too far gone. He sees kindness as weakness, love as leverage. We're going to confront Dennis tomorrow, Mom continued. Tell him we know everything that will expose him if he doesn't leave our family alone. We're prepared for threats for anger. What we can't prepare for is if something happens to us. That's why we're making this recording. If we die, it won't be an accident, Dad said firmly. Dennis has killed before the investigator found evidence of 2 previous accidents that benefited him. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Take everything to the FBI, to the media if necessary. Don't try to protect Marcus. He's made his choice. Mom was crying now. We love you so much, Terry. Your strength, your brilliance, your good heart, don't let anyone dim your light. The code you write, the problems you solve, the future you're building, that's your legacy. Guard it, value it, and never ever let anyone make you feel small for being smarter than them. Be happy, sweetheart, Dad added. Live your life, create amazing things, and know that we're proud of you always. The video ended. I sat in Patricia's office, shaking with grief and rage and a terrible understanding. My parents had died trying to protect me. They'd confronted Dennis and he'd killed them for it. The FBI agent Jennifer Walsh contacted me yesterday, Patricia said gently. I've given her copies of everything. With this evidence, plus what you've gathered, Dennis and Marcus will face serious charges. Your parents' deaths will finally see justice. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Found your car at the house. You have 2 hours left, sister. Sign the papers or I release everything I've fabricated about you. Your choice. I showed Patricia the message. She smiled and it was sharp as a blade. Let him threaten. In 2 hours, he'll have bigger problems than a contract. Federal marshals are already preparing warrants based on the evidence Jennifer has submitted. Your parents' protection held Terry. It just took 5 years to activate. What should I do? Go back to your team. Finish building your case. And in 2 hours, when Marcus expects your surrender, give him something else entirely the truth, backed by 5 years of evidence, and the last gift your parents left you proof of their murder. I stood to leave, carrying the weight of my parents' love and sacrifice. They'd seen the danger coming and done everything they could to protect me, even at the cost of their lives. Now it was my turn to finish what they'd started. As I drove back to Sarah's apartment, I thought about Marcus's threat to release fabricated evidence about me. He still didn't understand the difference between truth and lies, between creation and theft, between strength and manipulation. In 2 hours, he'd learn. The sister he'd told to sit by the trash hadn't just survived his betrayal, she'd inherited our parents' final weapon against him, the truth documented and preserved, waiting for this moment to destroy every lie he'd built his empire upon. Back at Sarah's apartment, the atmosphere was electric with urgency. Ryan had set up a makeshift war room with multiple laptops, printers, and secure communication devices. Sarah was coordinating with Jennifer's team, while 3 new faces sat around the dining table. Terry, Sarah said, looking up from her screens. These are some of the other victims Jennifer connected us with. They insisted on coming to help. A woman in her 40s with tired eyes stood first. Elena Vasquez, you read my email. After Jennifer contacted me, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I brought everything, lab notebooks, patents filed in my daughter's name proof of my original work. A younger man, maybe 30, offered his hand next. James Chen, my brother stole my entire game engine and sold it to a major studio. I've been fighting alone for 2 years. When I heard about your case about Dennis Mitchell's network, everything clicked. My brother attended a business success seminar right before he started manipulating me. The third person, a woman around my age, had tears in her eyes. Amanda Richardson. My cousin took my architectural designs, my sustainable building innovations. She's built an entire firm on my work while I've been blacklisted in the industry for making false claims. She learned how to destroy me from someone named Dennis. He recruited them all. I said the pieces falling into place. Dennis found people with ambitious relatives and taught them how to harvest family talent. Patricia's evidence spread across the table, photos, reports, financial documents. The other victims leaned in, recognizing patterns from their own experiences. This photo. James pointed to one showing Dennis at a conference. I've seen this before. My brother had a brochure from this event. Maximizing family resources for business success. I thought it was just another self-help scam. Elena pulled out her phone. I kept my daughter's calendar from that time. Look, Advanced Strategies Workshop with D. Mitchell. 3 months later, she started asking to collaborate on my research. We began mapping connections and the network's scope became terrifyingly clear. Dennis had trained dozens of people over 20 years. Each trainer went on to recruit others, creating a pyramid scheme of intellectual property theft. The harvesters weren't just stealing, they were teaching others how to steal, spreading their poison through families across the country. Jennifer arrived with 2 FBI agents in tow. We've got approval for a coordinated takedown, she announced. But we need more than financial fraud. The murder investigation into your parents' death is being reopened based on Patricia's evidence, but that will take time. For immediate arrests, we need to prove the conspiracy. I might have something, Amanda said quietly. She pulled out a tablet. My cousin was sloppy. She recorded some of her training sessions for review, including this one. She played a video. Dennis stood at a whiteboard teaching a room full of people. His words were chilling in their casualness. Family loyalty is your greatest asset, he said on the recording. They want to trust you, need to believe in you. Your job is to position yourself as their protector while systematically acquiring their assets. Intellectual property is ideal. It's hard to prove theft, especially if you maintain access to their devices. The camera panned across the audience. I gasped, recognizing several faces. Marcus sat in the front row taking notes, but he wasn't alone. There were at least 20 others, all learning how to betray their families. When do we have this from? Jennifer asked. 18 months ago, Amanda replied, right before the biggest wave of thefts. Ryan had been quiet, working on something on his laptop. Suddenly he spoke up. I found something. Remember Marcus said he's going public with NeuralSync? I've been monitoring SEC filings. He submitted preliminary paperwork yesterday, but look at the investor list. The names made my stomach turn. Every major investor was connected to a harvester victim. They weren't just investing in stolen technology, they were creating a network of companies built entirely on family betrayal. It's a laundering system, Sarah breathed. They steal the IP, create companies, then invest in each other to legitimize the theft. Once they go public, the original creators can never reclaim their work. My secure phone rang. It was Carl Hendricks, the mechanic. Ms. Mitchell, I'm at the FBI office now with the evidence. But there's something else. That man Dennis, he came to see me last week, offered me $100,000 to disappear. When I refused, he said you'd be joining your parents soon if you didn't cooperate. I recorded the whole conversation. Another death threat, another piece of evidence, but also another confirmation that Dennis was getting desperate. 1 hour until Marcus's deadline, I noted. Jennifer smiled grimly. Perfect timing. Federal agents are already in position. Patricia filed the trust documentation with the court this morning, establishing your financial independence. The other victims have filed their complaints. We're ready. What about Marcus and Dennis? I asked. Where are they now? Heading to Marcus's office. He's called an emergency investor meeting, probably to discuss damage control. He knows something's wrong, but not how much we have. Elena spoke up. I want to be there. When they're arrested, I want my daughter to see my face, to know that I fought back. Same, James added. 2 years of being called a liar, watching my brother profit from my work. I need to see this through. Jennifer considered. It could be dangerous. These people have killed before. They've already taken everything from us, Amanda said firmly. Our work, our reputations, our families. We're not hiding anymore. Patricia stood. I'll come too. As the trustee of Terry's fund and keeper of her parents' evidence, I have legal standing to be present. Plus, I have something Marcus needs to see. What? I asked. She pulled out a document. Your parents' real will, the one Dennis and Marcus don't know about. It explicitly disinherits Marcus if he's found guilty of crimes against family members. Every asset he thinks he'll inherit actually goes to charity. Your parents saw this coming and protected their legacy from him. The room fell silent as we absorbed this final blow to Marcus's plans. Even in death, my parents had thought of everything. All right, Jennifer decided. We go in together, victims, witnesses, and law enforcement. Let's end this. As we prepared to leave, I looked around the room at my unlikely alliance. Other victims who'd found their voices, friends who'd never stopped believing in me, investigators who dedicated months to justice, and the ghostly presence of my parents still protecting me through the evidence they'd left behind. The war room was littered with proof of years of theft, manipulation, and murder. But it was also filled with something more powerful, truth supported by evidence and witnessed by people who refused to be silenced anymore. 20 minutes until the deadline, Sarah announced. I picked up the work for hire agreement Marcus had given me, still crumpled from yesterday. 24 hours ago, I'd stood in his mansion, humiliated and alone. Now I stood surrounded by allies armed with truth, ready to bring down an entire network of predators. Let's go, I said. Time to show Marcus what happens when you tell someone to sit by the trash. Sometimes they come back with an entire army of people you threw away. We filed out of the apartment, a convoy of justice heading toward Marcus's office. The harvesters had built their empire on the assumption that family bonds would keep victims silent, that love would prevent justice, that talent could be stolen without consequence. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Every document we carried, every recording we'd made, every testimony we'd gathered, it all led to this moment. The network that had thrived in shadow was about to be dragged into the light. As we drove, my phone buzzed with Marcus's final threat: 5 minutes, sister, sign or be destroyed. I typed back, "See you soon, brother. Bring Dennis. You'll want him there for what comes next." The empire built on stolen dreams was about to collapse, and everyone who'd been told they were worthless, who'd been harvested and discarded, would be there to watch it fall. Neural Sync Solutions occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown tower. As our convoy pulled into the parking garage, I could see federal agents already positioned at various entrances. Jennifer coordinated through her earpiece, while the rest of us gathered our evidence files. "Remember," Jennifer said, addressing our group, "let them talk. The more they say, the more they incriminate themselves. We have recording devices in place, and everything they say will be admissible." Patricia pulled me aside. "Your mother would be proud of you today. You're not just seeking justice for yourself, you're protecting future families from this network." We entered through the main lobby. The security guard started to protest our large group, but Jennifer's FBI credentials silenced him. The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt eternal, each victim lost in their own thoughts of what they'd lost and what they might reclaim today. The elevator opened to Neural Sync's reception area, all glass and modern art paid for with stolen innovation. Through the conference room windows, I could see the Marcus holding court with a dozen investors, Dennis at his right hand like a malevolent counselor. They hadn't noticed us yet. Terry. The receptionist Kelly Martinez, the whistleblower who'd provided crucial evidence, stood from her desk. "They're all here. Every major investor. Marcus has been spinning tales about a minor family dispute that's been resolved." "Thank you for everything, Kelly," I said. "After today, you won't have to pretend anymore." She smiled with relief. "I've dreamed of this day. Watching him steal from you while treating me like furniture, I documented everything I could." Jennifer nodded to her team. "Positions, everyone. Terry, you go in first. The rest follow on my signal." I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and pushed open the conference room door. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. Marcus's confident smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. "Terry, perfect timing. I was just telling our investors about your decision to support the company. You did bring the signed agreement, right?" I walked to the center of the room, feeling every eye on me. Dennis watched like a snake coiled and ready to strike. The investors, successful people who'd built their wealth on others' stolen dreams, shifted uncomfortably. "I brought something better," I said, setting my file box on the conference table. "The truth." Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. Dramatic as always. "Gentlemen, ladies, my sister has been under some stress." Stress. I opened the box, pulling out document after document. Like when you installed spyware on my computer 6 months after our parents died, or when you created shell companies to steal my client payments, or when you filed patents on my algorithms while I was mourning. "These accusations are ridiculous," Dennis interjected smoothly. "Marcus built this company through his own through theft," Elena said, entering the room. "Just like my daughter stole my protein folding algorithms after attending your seminar, Dennis." James followed. "Like my brother stole my game engine after your advanced strategies workshop." Amanda came next. "Like my cousin stole my architectural designs using your playbook." One by one, the victims entered. The investors' faces paled as they recognized the pattern, perhaps seeing their own crimes reflected in the accusations. Marcus stood, his face flushed. "This is an ambush. Security won't help," Jennifer said, entering with her FBI badge visible. "This conference room is now a crime scene. Everyone please remain seated." "You can't be serious," Dennis said, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. "These are family disputes, not federal crimes." Patricia entered last, carrying a box of her own. Actually, Dennis' conspiracy to commit murder is definitely a federal crime, as is running an interstate fraud network, money laundering, and racketeering. She began laying out evidence on the table: the mechanic's affidavit, the brake components, the security footage, the private investigator's reports, my parents' video testimony. Impossible. Dennis breathed, his face draining of color. My parents knew what you were, I said, my voice steady despite the pain. They documented everything. They prepared for the possibility that confronting you might cost them their lives. And they were right, weren't they? Marcus looked between Dennis and the evidence, realization dawning. Uncle Dennis, what is she talking about? Shut up, Marcus! Dennis snapped, his mask finally slipping. Oh, he doesn't know. I turned to my brother. Dennis never told you he killed our parents, that the car accident was murder because they threatened to expose his network. That's not, I didn't, Marcus stammered, genuinely shaken for the first time. Jennifer pulled up the video Amanda had provided on the conference room screen. There was Dennis teaching his harvest techniques to a room full of eager students. The investors watched in horror as their mentor explained how to exploit family trust, how to steal intellectual property, how to destroy anyone who might expose them. Every person in this room who invested in companies built on stolen IP is now part of a federal investigation, Jennifer announced. Your cooperation will be noted. Your resistance will be prosecuted. The room erupted. Investors demanding lawyers, Dennis shouting about entrapment, Marcus desperately trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But I stayed focused on my brother, watching the empire he'd built on my work crumble around him. You told me to sit by the trash where I fit, I said loud enough to cut through the chaos. But you never understood I was never trash. I was the treasure you tried to steal. My code, my innovations, my trust, my love. You took it all and gave back humiliation. I pulled out the crumpled work-for-hire agreement. You wanted me to sign away my life's work for $50,000, work you've already stolen worth millions. But here's the thing about Code, Marcus. It always tells the truth. Every algorithm has my signature. Every innovation bears my fingerprints. Every line proves your theft. Kelly entered with a laptop. I have one more thing to show everyone. Marcus's private emails from last week discussing the frame job he was planning against Terry, including this gem where he brags about setting up evidence to have her arrested for corporate espionage after the IPO. She projected the emails on screen. Marcus's own words condemned him, revealing plans to destroy me completely once he'd extracted maximum value. The investors who'd been considering loyalty to him recoiled at the viciousness of his intentions. I want a deal, one investor suddenly said. I'll testify about the network, about Dennis's training, about everything. I can't go to prison. Me too, another added. I have records of every harvester meeting, every victim identified, every theft planned. The dominoes began falling, each person trying to minimize their own culpability by revealing more about the network's operations. Dennis watched his life's work, decades of building a theft empire, crumble in minutes. Federal agents entered the room. Dennis Mitchell, Marcus Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and suspicion of murder. You have the right to remain silent. As they cuffed Dennis, he stared at me with pure hatred. You stupid girl. You had everything: a brother who cared enough to make something of your talent, an uncle offering wealth beyond measure. You chose poverty and principles instead. I chose truth, I replied, and integrity, and the legacy my parents actually left me, not money but values. Every line of code I write honors them. Every problem I solve proves their faith in me. That's something you could never steal. Marcus looked broken as they cuffed him. For the first time since our parents died, I saw the boy he'd been before Dennis's poison, before the greed, before the betrayal. Terry, Don't, I said quietly. You made your choices every day for 5 years. Every theft, every lie, every humiliation. You killed the brother I loved long before today. As they led him away, he called back, "The company, my life's work." "You mean my life's work?" I corrected. "Don't worry. The FBI will make sure every stolen algorithm is returned to its creator. Every victim will be made whole. Your company will dissolve, but the innovations will live on, credited to the people who actually created them." The conference room emptied slowly as agents processed each person. The other victims stood together, tears and triumph mingling on their faces. We'd done it. The network that had stolen from so many families was finished. Elena hugged me tightly. "Thank you for being brave enough to fight back first, for showing us we didn't have to suffer in silence." "We all fought back," I said. "Every document preserved every email, saved every refusal to give up. We all built this victory together." Patricia approached with a folder. "There's one more thing. Your parents' trust. $3 million grown to nearly $5 million with investment returns. It's yours now. What will you do with it?" I looked around at the other victims at Kelly who'd risked everything to gather evidence at Sarah and Ryan, who'd stood by me when I had nothing left to give. "First, we're going to make sure every victim gets their stolen assets back. Then I'm starting a company, a real one, built on innovation, not theft. And I want all of you to be part of it if you're willing. Together we can show the world what creation looks like when it's founded on trust instead of betrayal." The sun was setting over the city as we finally left the building. Federal agents were still processing evidence, but our part was done. The network was exposed, the victims vindicated the truth, triumphant. As I walked out with my chosen family, the alliance forged from shared pain and mutual support, I thought about Marcus's parting words about his life's work. He'd never understood that stealing someone else's creation could never be called life's work. True work meant building something from nothing, solving problems that hadn't been solved, adding value to the world. Tomorrow I'd start doing that work again. But now, surrounded by people who'd fought alongside me for justice, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 5 years, genuine hope. The trash my brother had told me to sit beside had transformed into fertilizer for something new and beautiful, a future built on truth, innovation, and the unbreakable bonds between people who refuse to let predators win. The Harvester Network was dead. From its ashes, something better would grow. The federal building's interrogation room was stark and cold, fluorescent lights, harsh against gray walls. I sat beside Jennifer and Patricia, watching through one-way glass as Dennis Mitchell faced questioning. Even in handcuffs, he maintained his snake-like composure, treating the FBI agents like business associates he could eventually charm. "We don't need him to confess to everything," Jennifer explained. "Your evidence is solid. But if we can get him talking about the broader network, we can save dozens more families." In the adjacent observation room, Marcus sat with his public defender. He looked diminished, his designer suit wrinkled, his perfect image shattered. I'd asked to observe both interrogations, needing to understand the full scope of their betrayal. Dennis's interrogation began with financial crimes, the FBI agent methodically presenting evidence of money laundering and fraud. Dennis deflected, minimized, played word games. Then the agent placed a photograph on the table my parents' car at the accident scene. "Let's talk about Robert and Linda Mitchell," the agent said. For the first time, Dennis's composure cracked slightly. "Tragic accident. I wasn't even in contact with the family then." "Actually, you were." The agent laid out the mechanic's affidavit, the tampered brake components, the security footage. "You had their car serviced. You had access. You had motive. They were about to expose your network." "Speculation and circumstance," Dennis said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "Then there's this." The agent played Carl Hendricks's new recording from the previous week. Dennis's voice filled the room. "You should have stayed quiet, old man, just like Robert and Linda should have stayed quiet. Some people don't understand that silence is survival." Dennis's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but the damage was done. The agent pressed forward with more evidence. The email intercepts the timeline of my parents' final day's witness statements, placing Dennis near their home the night before the accident. In the other room, Marcus was crumbling. His interrogator showed him evidence of the theft, the shell companies, the years of systematic exploitation. But when she played the recording of Dennis teaching harvest techniques, focusing on a segment where Dennis specifically discussed Marcus's project, his reaction was visceral. He said Terry would never amount to anything without guidance. Marcus said, his voice hollow, that her talent was wasted on her, that family resources should flow to those who could maximize them. I thought I was building something. You were, the interrogator replied, built on your sister's stolen work. No, you don't understand. Marcus leaned forward, desperation replacing arrogance. Dennis made it sound noble, like I was helping Terry by taking the burden of business from her. She could create, I could monetize. A partnership where she didn't even need to know she was participating. Did you know about your parents? The agent asked directly. Marcus's face went white. What about them? She showed him the evidence linking Dennis to their deaths. I watched my brother process the possibility that he'd been manipulated by our parents' killer, that his mentor was a murderer. The transformation was devastating, his worldview collapsing in real time. He said they died at the perfect time, Marcus whispered, that it was fortunate because they would have held us back. I thought he meant their traditional thinking. Oh God, did he kill them? Jennifer's phone buzzed. She checked it and smiled grimly. Dennis's former partner just arrived. Says he has something we need to hear immediately. We moved to a conference room where a nervous man in his 60s waited. He introduced himself as Thomas Garrett, Dennis's first business partner from 25 years ago. I've carried this guilt for too long, Thomas began. Dennis and I started the Harvester Network together, but I got out when I realized what it was becoming. I thought distance would be enough. I was wrong. He pulled out an old laptop. I kept records, everything from the beginning, including this Dennis's original business plan. He called it Mining the Family Gold. It specifically targeted technical talent in families exploiting emotional bonds for profit. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Patricia asked. Fear. Dennis had already caused 2 accidents by then. But when I saw the news about Neural Sync, about Terry fighting back, I knew it was time. Dennis is escalating. There are plans on here for international expansion for targeting immigrant families who might be less likely to involve authorities. Thomas opened file after file revealing the network structure. Training materials, victim lists, profit distributions. But one document made everyone freeze, a list titled Permanent Solutions. Those are people who threatened to expose the network, Thomas said quietly. The ones who had accidents or suicides or simply disappeared. 23 names over 20 years. My parents were on the list marked as completed. He documented murders, Jennifer breathed. Dennis believed in keeping records of everything. Leverage, he called it. Insurance against partners who might betray him. He never imagined someone would use his own documentation against him. We returned to watch Dennis's interrogation armed with this new evidence. The FBI agent placed the Permanent Solutions list in front of him. Dennis's face went from pale to ashen. My client needs a deal, his lawyer said immediately. 23 murders, the agent said, plus conspiracy, fraud, racketeering. We're talking about life without parole at minimum. Death penalty is on the table. Dennis finally broke, not with remorse, but with rage. You have no idea what I've built. The network is bigger than you comprehend. Families in 12 countries harvesting billions in intellectual property. You've caught one node. There are dozens more. Give us names, the agent demanded. Not without full immunity. For 23 murders not happening. Dennis laughed bitterly. Then enjoy your partial victory. You've saved Terry Mitchell and a handful of others. Meanwhile, hundreds of families continue to be harvested. Their talent stolen, their futures mortgaged, their spirits broken. The strong have always fed on the weak. I just systematized it. In the other room, they showed Marcus the murder list. His breakdown was complete. "I didn't know," he kept repeating. "I thought it was just business, just leveraging advantages. I didn't know he was killing people." "But you knew you were destroying your sister," the interrogator pointed out. "You watched her struggle while you lived off her work. You heard her pain when she asked for repayment and responded with humiliation. You didn't need to know about murders to know what you were doing was wrong." Marcus had no response to that. The truth was undeniable. He'd chosen greed over love manipulation, over family long before knowing the full extent of Dennis's evil. Jennifer pulled me aside. "We have enough to put Dennis away forever and Marcus for at least 20 years. The network will take longer to dismantle, but this is a massive victory. Your parents would be proud." "It doesn't bring them back," I said quietly. "No, but it honors their sacrifice. They died trying to protect you, and their preparation made this possible. Every family we save from the harvesters is part of their legacy." As the interrogations concluded, I found myself face to face with Marcus in a holding area. Guards stood nearby, but gave us a moment. "Terry," he began, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I know it means nothing now, but I'm so sorry. Dennis got in my head when I was young, made me believe terrible things about success and family and worth." "You're right," I said calmly. "It means nothing now. You had 5 years to choose differently. Every day you chose to steal from me, lie to me, humiliate me. Dennis may have taught you how, but you chose to do it. Can you ever forgive me?" I thought about it honestly. Maybe someday, after you've served your time, after you've made real amends to everyone you hurt, after you've proven you understand the difference between creating and stealing. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean we'll ever be family again. "I understand," he said quietly. "For what it's worth, Dennis was wrong. Your talent was never wasted on you. Everything you created was brilliant. I was just too poisoned to admit it." As they led him away, I felt a chapter closing. The brother who'd told me to sit by the trash was gone if he'd ever really existed outside my hope and denial. In his place was a cautionary tale about how greed and manipulation could corrupt even the closest bonds. Dennis was charged with multiple counts of murder, along with his financial crimes. The permanent solutions list led to reopened investigations across the country. Families who'd lost loved ones to suspicious accidents finally had answers. The Harvester Network began to unravel as more victims came forward, emboldened by our success. Thomas Garrett's evidence proved invaluable mapping connections that led to arrests in 8 states. But the real victory was smaller and more personal. That night I stood in my childhood home with Sarah, Ryan, Elena, James, Amanda, and Kelly. We'd formed an unlikely family bonded by shared trauma and mutual support. To the future, I said, raising a glass of my mother's favorite wine. To creating instead of stealing. To building instead of destroying. To choosing love over manipulation. To justice, Patricia added, joining our toast. As we drank, I thought about Dennis's claim that the strong had always fed on the weak. He was wrong. Strength wasn't taking from others, it was creating something from nothing. It wasn't manipulation, it was inspiration. It wasn't isolation, it was connection. The truly weak ones were those who could only succeed by stealing from others, who built empires on foundations of sand and betrayal. Their strength was an illusion that crumbled the moment truth entered the equation. Tomorrow we'd begin building something real, a company founded on innovation and integrity, where every creator was valued, where families supported rather than exploited each other. It would be hard work, but it would be honest work. The Harvesters had taken much from us: money, ideas, trust, and in my case, parents. But they'd failed to take the most important things: our ability to create, our capacity to love, and our determination to build something better from the ruins they'd left behind. 3 weeks later, I stood backstage at the Moscone Center in San Francisco, my heart pounding as I listened to the buzz of hundreds of investors, journalists, and tech industry leaders gathering in the main auditorium. This was supposed to be Marcus's triumphant moment, Neural Sync Solutions IPO announcement. Instead, it would become the Harvester Network's public execution. Jennifer stood beside me, earpiece in place, coordinating with federal agents positioned throughout the venue. "Dennis made bail last week," she informed me quietly. "He's here trying to salvage something from the wreckage. We have eyes on him." "Let him watch," I said, checking my presentation one final time. Every slide contained irrefutable evidence, every transition designed for maximum impact. He taught Marcus that public perception was everything. Let's show him what happens when the public learns the truth. Sarah appeared with a tablet. "The live stream is ready. Over 50,000 people waiting online, including journalists from every major outlet. The other victims are seated in the front row as planned." Through a gap in the curtain, I could see the auditorium filling. Tech executives, venture capitalists, potential investors, all here expecting to witness the birth of a unicorn company. Marcus's marketing had been excellent, promising revolutionary AI solutions that would transform industries. What they didn't know was that every algorithm he was promoting had been stolen from someone in this very room. "5 minutes, a stagehand announced. Ryan joined us backstage, looking professional in his suit, but with determination in his eyes. "The investment consortium is ready. The moment trading opens, we'll move to acquire all available shares, then immediately delist and dissolve the company. The intellectual property will be returned to its rightful owners within hours." This had been Patricia's idea: use the system against itself. Let Marcus's IPO happen, but immediately turn it into a vehicle for justice. Every dollar raised would go to victims. Every patent would revert to its creator. Every line of stolen code would be attributed correctly. The lights dimmed and Marcus's voice echoed through the sound system. He was already on stage, working the crowd with his practiced charm. On the massive screens behind him, Neural Sync's logo gleamed, built from my design elements naturally. "Welcome to the future of artificial intelligence." Marcus announced, confidence radiating despite everything that had happened. His lawyers had managed to get him house arrest pending trial, arguing he posed no flight risk. "Today, Neural Sync Solutions goes public, offering you the chance to invest in innovations that will define the next decade." The audience applauded. They didn't know that FBI agents were stationed at every exit, that federal warrants were ready to be served, that this entire event was now a carefully orchestrated sting operation. Marcus began his presentation showcasing his technologies. My distributed processing algorithm appeared on screen, renamed but unmistakable. Elena's protein folding solutions followed, then James's game engine optimization. Each theft presented as innovation, each victim's work claimed as his own. The genius of Neural Sync, on Marcus continued, is our ability to identify and maximize latent potential in unexpected places. We see value where others see waste. That was my cue. I walked onto the stage from the opposite wing, my appearance clearly unexpected. Marcus froze mid-sentence, his face cycling through emotions: surprise, anger, fear, and finally resignation. "Hello, Marcus," I said, my voice carrying through his wireless mic. "Mind if I join your presentation? After all, I wrote most of it." The audience stirred, confused by this interruption. Security started to move, but Jennifer's voice in their earpieces held them back. "Ladies and gentlemen," I continued, taking center stage as Marcus stepped back. "I'm Terry Mitchell, Marcus's sister, and I'm here to tell you the truth about Neural Sync Solutions. Every innovation you've seen today was stolen. Every algorithm, every breakthrough, every line of code taken from family members who trusted the thieves who stole them." I clicked my remote and my presentation replaced Marcus's on the screens. The first slide showed side-by-side comparisons, my original code and Neural Sync's version. The timestamps were damning, proving my work preceded his by years. This distributed processing algorithm, I created it for my master's thesis, while Marcus was learning how to systematically steal intellectual property from a network of criminals called the Harvesters. Gasps rippled through the audience. I clicked again, showing Elena's story, then James's, then Amanda's. Face after face of victims appeared, their innovations displayed alongside the theft. But code theft is just the beginning. I continued as Dennis tried to leave his seat, only to find federal agents blocking his path. The Harvester Network, founded by Dennis Mitchell, the man currently trying to flee, has destroyed hundreds of families over 20 years. They teach people how to exploit trust, steal innovation, and destroy anyone who might expose them. I played the video of Dennis teaching his techniques. The audience watched in horror as he explained how to manipulate family members, how to steal their work, how to gaslight them into compliance. Several investors in the audience shifted uncomfortably. I recognized some faces from the conference room raid. My parents discovered this network, I said, letting emotion enter my voice for the first time. They tried to stop it. They died in what was ruled an accident, but which we now know was murder. Dennis Mitchell killed them to protect his empire of theft. The screens showed the evidence, the tampered brakes, the mechanic's testimony, Dennis's own documentation of permanent solutions. The audience's shock turned to outrage as the full scope became clear. Marcus tried to speak. This is lies manipulation. Really? I clicked to the next slide, his own emails planning to frame me for corporate espionage. These are your words, Marcus. Your plans to destroy me after stealing everything I created. Should I read them aloud, or would you prefer to explain them yourself? He fell silent, his facade finally crumbling completely in public. Every person who invested in NeuralSync thinking they were funding innovation was actually funding theft. I continued. Every dollar came from someone's stolen dreams. But today, that ends. Jennifer took the stage, her FBI badge gleaming under the lights. I'm Special Agent Jennifer Walsh. This IPO event is now part of an active federal investigation. NeuralSync Solutions assets are frozen pending criminal proceedings. Several arrests will be made today. Chaos erupted as federal agents moved through the audience, serving warrants to investors who'd knowingly participated in the network. Dennis was arrested again, this time with no possibility of bail. Other Harvester members tried to flee, but found all exits blocked. Through it all, I kept speaking, my voice cutting through the pandemonium. To those who've been victims of the Harvesters, you're not alone. Come forward. We'll help you reclaim your work, your dignity, your future. To those who participated in this network, your time is over. The FBI has everything. I clicked to my final slide, a new company logo, Truth Forge Technologies, launching today. Founded by Harvester survivors dedicated to ethical innovation and supporting creators. Every person whose work was stolen by NeuralSync will be offered positions as founding partners. We're building something real from the ashes of their lies. The other victims joined me on stage, Elena James, Amanda Kelly, and dozens more who'd come forward in recent weeks. We stood together, a united front, against those who'd tried to exploit our trust. Marcus told me to sit by the trash where I fit, I said, looking directly at my brother. But he never understood that sometimes what gets discarded is actually treasure. Every creator he and Dennis threw away after stealing from them, we're all here. We survived, we're building, and we're ensuring this never happens to another family again. Security finally led Marcus away as he was formally arrested for securities fraud on top of his other charges. The attempted IPO had given the FBI jurisdiction over interstate commerce violations, adding decades to his potential sentence. As the auditorium emptied, some in handcuffs, others in shock, Patricia approached with tears in her eyes. Your parents would be so proud. You didn't just get justice, you protected countless future families. Ryan coordinated with legitimate investors who wanted to support TruthForge instead. We're already getting offers, he said. Clean money from people who believe in ethical innovation. This could actually work. Sarah was fielding media requests by the dozens. Every major outlet wants your story. The public is outraged by the Harvester Network. This is going to change how people think about family trust and intellectual property. But the moment that mattered most came when a young woman approached me afterward. "My father has been stealing my bioengineering work for 3 years," she said quietly. "I thought I was alone, that speaking up would destroy my family. Seeing you today, can you help me?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "We'll help you reclaim your work and your worth. You're not alone anymore." As we left the Moscone Center, I looked back at the chaos we'd created. Marcus's IPO announcement had indeed made history, just not the kind he'd intended. Instead of launching a company built on theft, we'd launched a movement for truth. The Harvester Network was dying in the light of public exposure. Their techniques, once whispered in private seminars, were now fodder for criminal prosecution. Families across the country were having difficult conversations, victims were finding their voices, and creators were learning to protect their gifts. TruthForge Technologies would rise from this wreckage, a company built on radical transparency, where every innovation was attributed, every creator valued, every contribution celebrated. We'd proved that ethical business wasn't just possible, but profitable. The empire of lies had fallen in the most public way possible, and from its ruins something honest and beautiful would grow. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity for what media outlets had dubbed the trial of the century for tech industry ethics. 6 months had passed since the failed IPO, and both Marcus and Dennis faced multiple federal charges. I sat in the witness section surrounded by other Harvester victims who'd become my extended family. Marcus's defense team had crafted a narrative of manipulation and coercion, painting him as another victim of Dennis's influence. Today was his day to testify, his last chance to avoid spending decades in federal prison. He took the stand in an orange jumpsuit, his designer suits a distant memory. The transformation was striking. Gone was the confident manipulator, replaced by someone who looked hollow, desperate. "Mr. Mitchell," his lawyer began, "tell us about your relationship with Dennis Mitchell." "He approached me when I was 18, Marcus said, his voice lacking its usual command. "Right after I'd failed to get into MIT, I was devastated my sister Terry had been accepted, and I felt like the family failure. Dennis found me at my lowest point." I remembered that time differently. Marcus hadn't been devastated, he'd been furious, ranting about how unfair it was that I'd gotten in when he was clearly the one destined for greatness. "He told me about natural hierarchies," Marcus continued. "How some people were meant to execute ideas while others were meant to generate them. He said Terry was wasting her potential, that her gifts needed someone with vision to maximize them." "Did you believe this was wrong?" his lawyer prompted. "Not at first. Dennis made it sound like collaboration. He showed me successful companies where technical talent partnered with business vision. But slowly it became something else. The taking became stealing. The collaboration became surveillance." The prosecutor, ADA Rebecca Chen, wasn't buying it. On cross-examination, she methodically dismantled his victim narrative. "Mr. Mitchell, you installed spyware on your sister's computer. Who physically did that?" "I did, but..." "You created shell companies to steal her client payments. Who signed those incorporation documents?" "I did, but Dennis." "You told your sister to sit by the trash where she fit in front of dozens of witnesses. Did Dennis script those words?" Marcus faltered. "No, that was me." Chen continued, relentlessly showing email after email where Marcus bragged about his thefts, celebrated each successful manipulation, mocked my trust in him. The jury watched his performance crumble as evidence mounted. Then came the desperate gambit we'd been warned about. Marcus suddenly pointed at me. "She knew Terry knew what I was doing and let it happen. She was complicit." The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged his gavel repeatedly. "Mr. Mitchell, these are serious allegations. Do you have any proof?" Marcus's lawyer produced a folder. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit new evidence. Emails between the defendant and his sister suggesting she was aware of the business arrangements." My heart raced, but Jennifer had prepared us for this possibility. Marcus was trying to muddy the waters, create reasonable doubt by implicating me. Chen objected immediately. "Your Honor, this is a clear attempt to victim blame. These emails need authentication and context." The judge reviewed the documents, then allowed them subject to authentication. Marcus's lawyer displayed them on the courtroom screens. They were real emails, but edited, taken out of context, arranged to tell a false story. This email, the lawyer said, shows Ms. Mitchell agreeing to share her code with the defendant. I saw my words twisted. What had been me excitedly sharing a breakthrough with my brother was reframed as a business arrangement. Other emails were similarly distorted, painting me as a willing participant rather than an unknowing victim. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, we have evidence that Ms. Mitchell benefited from NeuralSync's success. She lived rent-free in properties paid for by the company. You mean I paid my own rent while Marcus stole my income? I said loudly, unable to stay silent. Ms. Mitchell, you'll have your chance to respond, Judge Harrison warned. Marcus pressed his attack. She's not innocent in this. She knew I was using her code. She had to know she's too smart not to have figured it out. This whole victim act is just her way of taking credit for my business success. I watched my brother transform back into the narcissist I'd known, the mask of remorse falling away completely. This was his true face, someone who would destroy anyone to save himself, even now, even after everything. Chen stood calmly. Your Honor, the prosecution requests permission to present rebuttal evidence immediately. This attempt to blame the victim requires swift response. Proceed, the judge agreed. Chen called me to the stand. As I walked past Marcus, he whispered, "You did this to us, to our family." I took the oath and sat in the witness chair, meeting the eyes of jury members who would decide not just Marcus's fate, but the precedent for how harvester victims would be treated by the justice system. Ms. Mitchell, Chen began, let's address these edited emails. Can you provide context for this first one? Of course. That email was sent at 2 a.m. after I'd solved a problem I'd been working on for months. I was excited and wanted to share it with my brother because I thought he'd be proud of me. You'll notice the timestamp. This was 3 years before NeuralSync existed. We went through each email and I provided the real context. Messages of sisterly affection and professional excitement twisted into evidence of conspiracy. The jury's expressions shifted from confusion to disgust as they realized what Marcus was attempting. Did you ever give your brother permission to use your code commercially? Chen asked. Never. I shared my work because I loved him and thought he was interested in my career. I had no idea he was documenting everything to steal later. The defense claims you lived rent-free in properties owned by NeuralSync. Is this true? It's a complete fabrication. I have bank records showing every rent payment I made while living in a studio apartment I could barely afford. Meanwhile, Marcus was living in a mansion paid for with money stolen from my diverted client payments. Chen displayed my bank records, my lease agreements, proof of my financial struggle during the years Marcus claimed I was benefiting from his theft. Ms. Mitchell, why didn't you realize your brother was stealing from you? I took a breath, feeling the weight of the truth. Because I trusted him completely. Because every time something seemed off, he had an explanation. Because when you love someone, you don't immediately assume they're capable of such calculated cruelty. I believed in the brother I thought I knew not the stranger he'd become. On cross-examination, Marcus's lawyer tried to shake my testimony, but the evidence was too strong. Every supposed proof of my complicity crumbled under scrutiny. The jury saw the truth, a sister who'd loved unconditionally being betrayed by a brother who saw love as weakness. When I stepped down, Marcus made one last desperate play. He stood suddenly disrupting court protocol. I want to change my plea, he announced. I'm guilty, but only because she made me feel worthless, always perfect. Terry with her MIT acceptance and her brilliant code. You don't know what it's like living in that shadow. Judge Harrison threatened contempt, but Marcus continued his rant. She flaunted her intelligence, made me feel stupid. Dennis just showed me how to level the playing field. If she just shared credit, none of this would have happened. In that moment, the real Marcus stood exposed before the world. Not a victim of manipulation, but someone who chose crime over honest work, who blamed others for his own inadequacies, who even now couldn't take responsibility for his choices. Security removed him as he continued shouting about unfairness and persecution. The jury looked shaken but resolute. They'd seen through his performance to the entitled narcissist beneath. In closing arguments, Chen was devastating. The defendant wants you to believe that being jealous of his sister's talents justified theft, fraud, and conspiracy. That feeling inferior gave him the right to destroy her life. This isn't justice. It's the very entitlement that made the Harvester Network possible. Don't let him blame his victim for his crimes. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, intellectual property theft, racketeering. When the verdict was read, Marcus didn't react. He stared at me with empty eyes, still somehow believing this was my fault rather than the consequence of his choices. As court officers led him away to await sentencing, he called out one last time, "I hope you're happy, Terry. You've destroyed your own brother." "No," I replied, my voice steady. "You destroyed yourself the day you chose theft over love. I just refuse to let you destroy me, too." Outside the courthouse, media swarmed, but I pushed through to where the other victims waited. We'd all testified over the past weeks, sharing our stories, proving the pattern of abuse. Together, we'd shown that the Harvester Network was real, systematic, and criminal. "One down," Elena said, linking her arm through mine. "Dennis's trial starts next month." I nodded, knowing Dennis would be harder to convict. He was too careful, too clever, his crimes spread over decades. But we had something he'd never expected: unity. Dozens of victims working together, sharing evidence, refusing to be silenced by shame or fear. As we walked away from the courthouse, I thought about Marcus's final manipulation attempt. Even facing decades in prison, he'd tried to destroy me one more time. But his desperate gambit had backfired spectacularly, showing the jury and the world exactly who he really was. The brother who'd told me to sit by the trash had ended up there himself, not because I put him there, but because he'd chosen to build his life on a foundation of lies and theft. His empire had collapsed, and his attempt to drag me down with him had only highlighted the difference between us. I created. He stole. I built up. He tore down. I chose love even when it hurt. He chose greed even when he had everything. The trial was over, but our work continued. Truth Forge Technologies was thriving, helping other families identify and stop exploitation before it destroyed them. Every algorithm properly attributed, every creator fairly compensated, every innovation protected from those who would steal rather than create. Marcus's desperate gambit had failed, but it had also freed me completely. Any lingering doubt about whether I'd been too harsh, any residual guilt about his fate gone. He'd shown everyone who he really was, and in doing so, had released me from any obligation to mourn the brother he'd never actually been. Dennis Mitchell's federal trial was a spectacle that drew international attention. Unlike Marcus's emotional implosion, Dennis approached his judgment day with cold calculation. But 3 weeks into proceedings, something unexpected happened. A catastrophic security breach at the Federal Detention Center allowed Dennis to orchestrate one final manipulation. He'd managed to coordinate a live interview from custody broadcasting across social media before authorities could stop it. I watched from the FBI field office with Jennifer and the team, horrified as Dennis appeared on screen in his orange jumpsuit, still projecting that snake-like charisma. "I want to tell my side." Dennis began looking directly into the camera. "Yes, I taught people to maximize family resources. Yes, I showed them how to identify and extract value. But I'm not the monster they're painting me as. I'm a businessman who recognized inefficiency in how families operate." Jennifer immediately started making calls to shut down the broadcast, but Dennis had prepared well. The stream jumped between platforms faster than they could be blocked. "My nephew Marcus was a failure," Dennis continued. "Rejected from every good school, no particular talents, watching his sister succeed effortlessly. I gave him purpose, showed him how to transform her raw ability into something profitable. Without me, he'd be nobody. Without him, Terry's code would sit on personal computers, helping no one. My hands clenched as he rewrote history, painting theft as charity, crime as innovation, but Dennis wasn't done. The real tragedy is Terry Mitchell herself, brilliant but naive, creating without purpose. In traditional societies, families pool resources naturally. The talented support, the charismatic. The smart enable the strategic. I simply formalized this process. Then came the most chilling part. Dennis pulled out a piece of paper somehow he'd obtained a printout in custody. I have here a list of every active harvester cell operating globally. 53 groups across 14 countries, all using my techniques to maximize family potential. If I go down, I'm taking them all with me. He began reading names, locations, targets, families we hadn't discovered yet, victims who didn't know they were being harvested. It was simultaneously a confession and a threat: cooperate with me or I'll burn everything down. But I'm willing to make a deal, Dennis said. Full immunity in exchange for shutting down the entire network. I'll provide names, techniques, prevention strategies. Think of how many families I could save. All you have to do is let me walk away. The broadcast ended abruptly as guards finally reached him, but the damage was done. Within minutes, news outlets were replaying his confession. Social media exploded with reactions, and our secure phones rang non-stop. In the war room at the FBI office, chaos reigned. Prosecutors debated whether Dennis's confession was admissible. Investigators scrambled to verify the new intelligence, and victims' advocates demanded immediate action to protect the newly identified targets. "He's trying to force our hand," Jennifer said. "Make himself too valuable to prosecute." "Or he's destroying evidence," Sarah countered, "warning his network to scatter before we can reach them." Patricia arrived with urgent news. 3 of the names Dennis mentioned have already disappeared, cleared out their homes, emptied bank accounts. He gave them a head start. I stood up, decision crystallizing. We need to go public immediately, not through lawyers or FBI statements. The victims need to speak directly. "Terry, that's dangerous," Jennifer warned. "There are still active harvester cells, which is why we can't wait. Every hour we debate, more families are being destroyed. Dennis wants to control the narrative, fine. Let's show the world what his innovation really costs." Within 2 hours, we'd assembled a press conference. Not in some sterile government building, but at the offices of Truth Forge Technologies, the company built from the ashes of theft. 53 victims stood behind me, each holding photos of what they'd lost. Not just code or money, but dreams, relationships, trust. The room was packed with journalists, cameras streaming live to millions. I approached the microphone, my parents' photo in my hand. 3 hours ago, Dennis Mitchell tried to negotiate his freedom by threatening more families. I began. He offered to shut down his network in exchange for immunity. Today, we, the survivors of that network, reject his offer completely. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Prosecutors had recommended considering the deal to save future victims. We were publicly defying that recommendation. Dennis Mitchell murdered my parents. I continued, my voice steady despite the pain. He trained my brother to destroy me. He built an empire on family betrayal and has the audacity to call it innovation. We will not let him walk free, no matter what he threatens. Elena stepped forward next. My daughter stole my life's work and sold it for millions while I struggled to pay for my husband's chemotherapy. The Harvester Network taught her that my love was weakness to exploit. Dennis Mitchell doesn't deserve deals, he deserves justice. One by one, victims shared their stories. James described years of gaslighting by his brother. Amanda revealed how her cousin had not only stolen her designs, but sabotaged her career to prevent exposure. Each testimony painted a picture of systematic destruction that went far beyond financial theft. Then Kelly Martinez, Marcus's former assistant, dropped the biggest bombshell. "I have recordings," she announced. Not just of Marcus, but of Dennis training others, including sessions where he specifically discussed how to make deaths look accidental. She played audio on the conference room speakers, Dennis's voice clinical and cold. Sometimes permanent solutions are necessary. A brake line failure, a medication mix-up, a fall from height. Tragic accidents that solve problems permanently. The key is patience and plausibility. The room fell silent except for the sound of cameras clicking. We just played evidence of murder conspiracy on live television. The FBI wanted us to wait, I said, resuming control. To let lawyers handle this quietly, but every day we wait, more families suffer. So we're going public with everything. Names, techniques, warning signs, all of it. Sarah and Ryan wheeled out boards covered with information. We'd created a comprehensive guide to identifying harvester techniques, protecting intellectual property, and recognizing manipulation tactics, free to anyone who needed it. Furthermore, I announced, TruthForge Technologies is establishing a victim fund, $10 million funded by the recovered assets from Neural Sync and contributions from ethical investors to help harvester victims reclaim their work and rebuild their lives. What about Dennis's list? A reporter called out. The 53 active cells? We're not waiting for immunity deals, Jennifer said, joining me at the microphone with her FBI credentials visible. Every name on that list is being investigated immediately. Every potential victim is being contacted, and Dennis Mitchell will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, regardless of what intelligence he offers. But the most powerful moment came when Marcus appeared on screen via video link from federal prison. He'd watched the conference from his cell and demanded to make a statement. Prison officials, seeing the public interest, had agreed. I want to confess, Marcus said, his face gaunt after months in custody. Not to reduce my sentence, I deserve every year I'm serving. But because Terry's right, the network needs to be exposed completely. He took a breath, then began detailing everything. Dennis's recruitment methods, the psychological manipulation, the specific techniques used to identify and exploit family members. It was a master class in predatory behavior laid bare by one of its practitioners. Dennis taught us that love was leverage, Marcus explained. That family bonds were chains to be pulled. He showed us how to make victims feel grateful while we robbed them, how to isolate them from outside validation, how to make them doubt their own worth while we stole their work. Why confess now? A reporter asked through the video link. Marcus looked directly at the camera at me. Because I watched this press conference and saw the truth. Dennis promised us power and wealth, but look what we actually built, a network of broken families and destroyed trust. I threw away the only real thing I had, my sister's love, for an empire of lies. His confession continued for 20 minutes, each revelation more damning than the last. He named names, exposed techniques, revealed the psychological profiles used to identify victims. It was the insider testimony prosecutors had dreamed of. When he finished, Marcus made one final statement. To anyone out there considering joining the Harvesters or any similar group, look at me. I had a brilliant sister who loved me unconditionally. I had parents who believed in me. I traded all of that for money that wasn't mine and success I didn't earn. Now I have nothing but regret and decades in prison. Don't make my mistake. The video ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Then slowly applause began. Not for Marcus, he deserved no applause, but for the power of truth, finally spoken aloud. Dennis's gambit had backfired spectacularly. Instead of forcing a deal, he'd triggered a mass confession that exposed his entire network. Within hours of our press conference, FBI tip lines were flooded with reports of suspected harvester activity. Victims who'd suffered in silence came forward. Conspirators panicked and fled, making them easier to track. 3 of Dennis's top lieutenants surrendered that evening, offering to testify against him in exchange for leniency. The network he'd spent decades building collapsed in a single day, brought down not by legal maneuvering, but by victims refusing to be silenced anymore. That night, as coverage of the press conference dominated every news outlet, I sat with the core team at TruthForge. We were exhausted but energized, knowing we'd changed something fundamental in how society viewed family exploitation. Dennis thought confession gave him power, Sarah observed. Instead, it gave us permission to tell the whole truth. Marcus's testimony will add years to Dennis's sentence, Jennifer added. Conspiracy to commit murder across state lines running a criminal enterprise. The RICO violations alone could mean life without parole. But Patricia raised the crucial point. The legal victories matter, but the cultural shift matters more. Every family watching tonight is having conversations about trust boundaries and protecting their gifts. That's the real victory. As if to underscore her point, my phone lit up with messages from around the world. Families recognizing exploitation patterns, young creators learning to protect their work, parents teaching children that love doesn't mean unlimited access to their talents. The Harvester Network was dead killed by its own confession, but from its corpse grew something beautiful, a global conversation about the difference between supporting family and enabling exploitation, between sharing gifts and surrendering them, between love and manipulation. Dennis had promised to name names, thinking it gave him leverage. Instead, he'd given us a map to save every family his network had targeted. The public confession meant to save him had become the very thing that ensured his life imprisonment. And Marcus's unexpected honesty, while not absolving him, had provided the insider perspective needed to prevent future networks from forming. His detailed confession became required viewing at FBI training facilities, a cautionary tale of how family love could be weaponized by those who saw affection as weakness. The empire built on stolen dreams had fallen not in shadow but in brightest light, exposed by those who'd suffered most. Tomorrow, the legal proceedings would continue. But tonight, families around the world were learning to recognize the signs, protect their gifts, and value creation over theft. The trash Dennis had told us to sit beside had become a platform to tell our truth. And that truth, spoken loudly and clearly, had changed everything. 1 year after the press conference that destroyed the Harvester Network, I stood in the lobby of Truth Forge Technologies' new headquarters. The building was modest but meaningful, purchased from the seized assets of Dennis Mitchell's criminal enterprise and transformed into a beacon of ethical innovation. The morning sun streamed through windows onto our central installation, a wall displaying patent certificates, each properly attributed to its true creator. Elena's protein folding algorithm, James's game engine, Amanda's architectural innovations, my distributed processing system, dozens more all returned to their rightful owners through the largest intellectual property repatriation in legal history. The final settlements came through this morning. Patricia announced joining me with a thick folder. As TruthForge's chief legal officer, she'd orchestrated the complex process of unwinding years of theft. Every identified victim has received compensation. Every stolen innovation has been reattributed. Every patent filed on stolen work has been invalidated and refiled. The numbers were staggering. Across 53 harvester cells, we'd identified over 300 victims. The recovered assets totaled nearly $500 million. But more importantly, hundreds of families had found closure and justice. Sarah arrived with our morning briefing, now serving as TruthForge's CFO. The European expansion is approved. The Berlin office opens next month, focusing on protecting immigrant families from exploitation. The Tokyo branch starts operations in the fall. What had begun as a desperate alliance of victims had evolved into a global company dedicated to ethical technology development and family protection. We employed over 200 people, many of them harvester survivors who understood firsthand the importance of our mission. Ryan entered with news from the investment side. The latest funding round closed at triple our target. Investors aren't just interested in our technology, they want to be associated with our ethics. Turns out, integrity is profitable. It was a lesson the tech industry had needed to learn. In the wake of the Harvester trials, venture capital firms had implemented new due diligence procedures, verifying the true origins of intellectual property before investing. Harvester screening had become a standard part of every tech deal. My phone buzzed with a notification I'd been expecting. "Dennis's final appeal was denied," I announced. "Life without parole stands." The room fell silent for a moment. Dennis Mitchell, the architect of so much pain, would die in prison. His network was destroyed. His techniques were public knowledge that families could guard against. His legacy was one of failure and shame. "And Marcus?" Elena asked gently. She knew my brother remained my one source of conflicted feelings. 25 years eligible for parole and 15 with good behavior, I replied. He's been teaching computer literacy to other inmates and working with the FBI to identify previously unknown harvester cells. It wasn't redemption, nothing could undo what he'd done, but it was something. Maybe in 15 years he'd emerge as someone who could contribute positively to society. Maybe not. Either way, justice had been served. Jennifer arrived for our weekly security briefing, though her role had evolved. After leaving the FBI, she'd joined TruthForge as head of our Family Protection Division, using her investigative skills to help families identify and stop exploitation before it destroyed them. 3 new cases this week, she reported. All caught early thanks to our public education campaign. Families able to set boundaries before theft occurred. The Harvester documentary you participated in has been viewed 50 million times globally. The documentary had been painful to make, reliving the worst moments of betrayal and loss. But if it helped even one family avoid what we'd experienced, it was worth every difficult interview. Kelly Martinez knocked and entered now our head of victim services. The Miller family is here for their consultation. Their son has been showing harvester pattern behaviors after attending what he called a business mentorship program. This was our daily work, now helping families recognize the signs, protect their assets, and maintain relationships without enabling exploitation. Sometimes we could save the family dynamic. Sometimes, like in my case, the betrayal was too deep. But always we ensured the victims retained their work and their worth. As the morning progressed, I moved through the building, checking on different departments. The legal team was working on international intellectual property protection treaties. The technology division was developing blockchain solutions for attribution tracking. The counseling center was hosting a support group for teenage harvester victims. Every aspect of TruthForge embodied the opposite of what Dennis had built. Where he'd created darkness, we fostered transparency. Where he'd encouraged theft, we protected creation. Where he'd destroyed families, we helped them heal. At lunch, the core team gathered in our conference room, the same people who'd stood together at that first press conference. We'd become more than colleagues. We were a chosen family bonded by shared trauma, transformed into shared purpose. "I have an announcement," Amanda said, smiling for the first time in years. My cousin reached out. She's completed her prison therapy program and wants to make amends. Real amends, including testifying about other harvester cells she knows about. "That's wonderful," I said, meaning it. Not every story ended with permanent estrangement. Some families found ways to rebuild, though trust once broken was never quite the same. "Speaking of family," Patricia interjected, "I have something for you, Terry." She handed me an envelope. "From your parents' estate. I was instructed to give this to you once justice was fully served." Inside was a letter in my mother's handwriting and a small USB drive. I read aloud. "Our dearest Terry, if you're reading this, then you've done what we couldn't stop Dennis and saved others from his poison. We're so proud of the woman you've become. This drive contains something we kept secret, your first program written when you were 8. You called it Family Helper, a simple app to organize chores and share messages of love. Even then you were trying to bring people together through technology. That's your true gift, sweetheart. Not just the code you write, but the connection you create. Build something beautiful. Love, Mom and Dad." I couldn't speak through the tears. Sarah hugged me while the others waited respectfully. On the drive was indeed my childhood program, crude but earnest, trying to help families communicate better. It was perfect. "We should frame the code," Ryan suggested softly. Display it in the lobby. Show everyone that Truth Forge's mission started long before the harvesters tried to corrupt it. The afternoon brought a surprise visitor. Marcus's former lawyer arrived with a package. Your brother asked me to deliver this. He said you'd know when to open it. Inside was a letter and a small key. Marcus's handwriting was shaky. Terry, I know I have no right to contact you, but I needed you to know that I remember. This key opens a safety deposit box at First National different from Mom's. Inside is every positive thing I ever wrote about you but never sent. Years of drafts praising your work, celebrating your achievements, expressing pride I was too poisoned to voice. I saved them all even while I was stealing from you. Maybe that makes it worse knowing I recognized your brilliance while destroying you. But I wanted you to have proof that somewhere buried under Dennis's poison, your brother did see you, did love you. Even if I chose greed over that love every single day, I'm sorry. That's inadequate, but it's true. Marcus. I held the key unsure what to do with this revelation. Part of me wanted to throw it away to reject this attempt at redemption manipulation. But Patricia, wise as always, offered counsel. You don't have to decide now, she said. Healing isn't linear. Maybe someday you'll want to read those letters. Maybe you'll throw the key in the ocean. Either choice is valid. The day continued with its mix of victories and challenges. A new victim came forward needing help reclaiming their work. A recovered harvester cell leader offered to testify in exchange for leniency. A family successfully set boundaries with a manipulative relative protecting their child's inventions. As evening approached, I stood again in the lobby looking at our wall of reclaimed innovations. Each patent represented not just stolen work returned, but a family's truth, acknowledged a creator's worth, validated. Elena joined me. Remember when we thought we were alone, when we believed speaking up would destroy us? Now we know better, I replied. Silence protects predators. Truth protects families. The building began to empty as people headed home to families they'd learned to protect, to creative work they knew how to safeguard, to lives rebuilt on foundations of truth rather than lies. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more families needing help, more stolen work to reclaim, more boundaries to establish. But tonight we could rest in the knowledge that justice had been served comprehensively and completely. The Harvester Network was dead. Dennis would die in prison. Marcus faced decades of consequence, and from the ashes of their empire of theft, something beautiful had grown, a global movement of creators protecting their gifts, families maintaining healthy boundaries and innovation, thriving in the light of attribution and truth. I thought of my parents, of their letter reminding me that connection was my true gift. Truth Forge had connected hundreds of families to justice, thousands of creators to protection, millions of people to the awareness they needed to guard against exploitation. The little girl who'd written Family Helper had grown up to help families worldwide, not the help Dennis had perverted, taking from some to give to others, but real help, protection, justice, truth. The empire built on stolen dreams was gone. In its place stood something far more powerful, a community of survivors who'd transformed their pain into protection for others, their loss into lessons for the world, their stolen work into a foundation for ethical innovation. We'd been told to sit by the trash where we fit. Instead, we'd built something beautiful from what was discarded. And in doing so, we'd ensured that no family would suffer in silence again, no creator would doubt their worth, no innovation would be stolen without consequence. Justice had been served. Now the real work building a better future could truly begin. 5 years had passed since Dennis Mitchell was sentenced to life in prison, and Marcus began serving his 25-year term. Truth Forge Technologies had grown into an international force for ethical innovation, and I'd found peace in the life we'd built from the ashes of betrayal. But that peace was about to be tested. The letter arrived on a gray Thursday morning, forwarded through official prison channels. Marcus's handwriting on the envelope made my hands shake slightly as I opened it in my office. Dear Terry, I've written this letter 100 times over the past 5 years. Each time I tear it up knowing I have no right to ask anything of you. But my counselor says healing requires honesty, even when it's terrifying. So here is my truth. I've spent these years in therapy education and reflection. I teach computer science to inmates, now properly, ethically making sure they understand that creation is the only path to real success. I've testified in 12 more harvester cases, helping prosecutors understand the psychological manipulation that Dennis perfected. But none of that matters compared to this. I finally understand what I took from you. Not just code or money, but safety, trust, the ability to share your gifts without fear. I stole your peace of mind along with your work, and that might be the worst theft of all. I'm writing because I need to tell you something I've never said honestly. You were never second best. You were never less than. You were always the brilliant one, the creative one, the one with real gifts. I knew it even as Dennis convinced me to destroy you for it, especially then. He found me when I was 18 and angry at the world for recognizing your talent over my charm. He whispered that unfairness into injustice, that envy into action. But I chose to listen. Every day for years I chose cruelty over love. That's on me, not him. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to apologize properly, to acknowledge the specific harm I caused, to face the pain I inflicted. My counselor calls it accountability without expectation. I call it the least I owe you. If you're willing, I'd like to meet, not as the brother who betrayed you, but as the man trying to understand how he became that brother. If you're not willing, I understand. This letter itself might be another violation of boundaries. I'm still learning where those should be. Whatever you decide, know this. Every day I work to become someone who creates rather than steals, who builds rather than destroys. Not for pardon or early release, but because I finally understand that's the only way to be truly human. Your work continues to change the world. I see Truth Forge's impact even from in here, families protected innovations, celebrated trust, rebuilt. You took the worst thing I did to you and transformed it into salvation for thousands. That's a gift I could never have stolen because I could never have imagined it. I'm sorry, Terry, for everything I took, for everything I broke, for the brother I failed to be. Marcus. I set the letter down and stared out my office window at the city below. 5 years of therapy success and healing, yet his words still had the power to shake me. The intercom buzzed Sarah, checking if I was ready for our meeting. I asked for a few minutes. The letter was different from his previous attempts at contact. Gone was the manipulation, the subtle blame-shifting, the attempts to minimize his crimes. This felt real, honest. The voice of someone who'd finally looked in the mirror and seen himself clearly. I called Patricia, who'd become my closest advisor on all things family-related. Marcus wrote again. I said simply, "How do you feel about it?" She asked, ever the therapist, even in retirement. Confused, angry that he can still affect me, curious about whether change is real, terrified of being manipulated again. All valid feelings. What does your gut say? That I need to think, process, maybe talk to Dr. Kim. My therapist had guided me through the trauma of the trials and beyond. This felt like something we needed to unpack together. 2 weeks of sessions followed. Dr. Kim helped me examine my motivations, fears, and boundaries. We role-played potential meetings, discussed what I might need from such an encounter, and most importantly established that I owed Marcus nothing. No meeting, no forgiveness, no response at all. But what do I owe myself? I asked during our final session on the topic. That's the real question, Dr. Kim replied. What would bring you peace? I knew the answer, even if it scared me. I needed to see who he'd become, not for him, but for my own closure, to replace the memory of the brother who'd told me to sit by the trash with whatever reality existed now. The prison visiting room was sterile and cold. I waited at a metal table, my hands folded, my heart racing. When Marcus entered in his orange jumpsuit, I barely recognized him. Gone was the slick manipulator. In his place sat a man who looked older than his years, worn down by consequence, and hopefully rebuilt by reflection. "Terry?" he said softly, not moving to sit until I gestured. "Thank you for coming." "I'm here for me, not you," I said firmly. "I need to hear what you have to say. After that, I'll decide if there's anything more to discuss." He nodded. "I understand. Where should I start?" "With the spyware. I want to know when you made that choice, the moment you decided to violate me so completely." Marcus flinched but didn't deflect. 6 months after Mom and Dad died, Dennis had been working on me for a year, but I still had doubts. Then you got that big contract with Novatech, and I watched you celebrate. You were so happy, so accomplished, and I felt nothing but rage, that you could succeed while I floundered. Dennis suggested the monitoring software that night, and I installed it the next time you asked me to fix your computer. You used my trust in your technical skills against me. Yes, every time you thanked me for helping, I felt sick. But I did it anyway. The sickness became easier to ignore as the money started flowing. For 2 hours, he answered every question honestly. No excuses, no blame shifting, just acknowledgement of each violation. The shell companies, the client theft, the gaslighting when I'd suspected something was wrong, the plan to frame me for corporate espionage. The worst part, he said, tears flowing freely, was the party. When I told you to sit by the trash, I saw your face break, and for a moment I saw you clearly, my brilliant, generous sister who'd done nothing but love and support me. And instead of stopping, I laughed. I chose cruelty in that moment because kindness would have meant facing what I'd become. "And what did you become?" I asked. "A parasite. Someone who could only feel successful by stealing from others. Dennis taught the method, but I embraced it because it was easier than developing my own talents, than facing my own limitations, than accepting that maybe I was ordinary and that was okay." The word hit me. Ordinary. Marcus's greatest fear had always been being average, unremarkable. Dennis had weaponized that fear into a criminal empire. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Marcus continued. "I'm asking you to know that I finally understand the difference between creating and stealing, between building and destroying, between love and exploitation. It took losing everything to learn what you always knew." "What happens when you get out?" I asked. "In 10 years, when you're eligible for parole, I'll have a computer science degree by then. Real skills honestly earned. I want to teach not at universities, they'd never have me, but maybe at community centers helping at-risk youth understand that shortcuts lead to cells like this one. I want to spend whatever life I have left preventing others from becoming what I became. And if you're tempted again, if someone offers you an easy path," Marcus met my eyes. "Then I'll remember this moment. Sitting across from the sister I destroyed, seeing the empire she built on truth, while mine built on lies, crumbled to nothing. That's my anchor now. The memory of what choosing theft really costs." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I pulled out a printed page, something I'd prepared in case this moment came. "This is a letter I wrote to you," I said. "Not to send, but to process. My therapist suggested it 3 years ago. I want to read it to you." Marcus nodded, bracing himself. "Dear Marcus," I read, "I loved you completely. When we were children, you were my hero. Confident where I was shy, charming where I was awkward. I would have given you anything, shared everything if you'd just asked. The betrayal wasn't the theft I could have recovered from that. It was discovering that you saw my love as weakness, my trust as stupidity, my gifts as resources to be exploited. You didn't just steal my code, you stole my ability to share joy without fear. Every time I solve a problem now, part of me wonders who's watching, who's planning to take it. That hypervigilance is exhausting. It's the scar you left that may never fully heal, but I'm healing anyway, building anyway, trusting anyway. Because letting your poison keep me isolated would be letting Dennis win. So I choose to transform trauma into purpose pain, into protection for others. I choose to be everything you and Dennis tried to convince me I wasn't valuable, worthy, whole. I don't forgive you. Maybe someday I will, but not today. Today I simply acknowledge that you exist, that you're human, that you're capable of change, even if I'll never fully trust that change. We're not family anymore. Family doesn't do what you did. But we're connected by history, by DNA, by the shared tragedy of parents who loved us both and died trying to protect me from what you'd become. I hope you find peace and accountability. I hope you build something real. I hope you learn to create instead of steal. But mostly, I hope I never have to see you again after today. Not from anger, but from acceptance that some bridges once burned should stay ash. Go well, Marcus. Go far. But go. When I finished reading, Marcus was sobbing. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but something deeper, more broken. "Thank you," he whispered, "for the honesty, for showing me exactly what I destroyed, for giving me this closure even though I didn't deserve it." I stood to leave. There was nothing more to say. But at the door, I turned back. "Marcus, that safety deposit box you mentioned, the one with letters you never sent, I opened it last year." His head snapped up. They were beautiful words, proud, supportive, loving, everything a sister would want to hear from her brother. But they were just words you chose not to act on. That's the tragedy. You saw my worth clearly and destroyed me anyway. But it also gives me hope. Somewhere inside, you knew how to love properly. Maybe you'll find that part of yourself again, for someone else, some other family you build honestly. Terry. Goodbye, Marcus. Don't contact me again. This was closure, not reopening. Live well, create things, help people, make whatever amends you can to the world, but do it away from me. That's my boundary, and I need you to respect it. I left without looking back. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and cried for the brother I'd lost, for the conversation we'd had, for the closure I'd found. Then I called Sarah. "How did it go?" she asked immediately. "It's over," I said. Really over. I said what I needed to say, heard what I needed to hear. Now I can move forward without wondering what if. That evening, I wrote a final letter, not to Marcus, but to my parents. Mom and Dad, I saw Marcus today. He's finally facing what he became, what he did. It doesn't undo the pain or bring you back, but there's accountability now. The son you loved exists somewhere inside the man in prison. Maybe that's enough, knowing he wasn't always lost, even if he's lost to me. Thank you for trying to protect me. Thank you for the evidence that brought justice. Thank you for showing me that love doesn't mean accepting abuse, that family isn't an excuse for exploitation, that boundaries are necessary, even with those we love most. I'm building the life you wanted for me, creative, meaningful, protected. TruthForge helps families stay whole while maintaining healthy boundaries. We teach what you tried to show Marcus, that success means creation, not theft, that love means support, not exploitation. I forgive myself for not seeing the truth sooner. I forgive myself for loving someone who hurt me. I even forgive myself for the anger I still sometimes feel. But I don't forgive Marcus. Maybe that makes me less than you'd want me to be. Or maybe it makes me exactly who you raise someone strong enough to say that some actions have permanent consequences, that some bridges should stay burned, that protecting myself isn't selfish but necessary. Rest knowing justice was served. Rest knowing I'm safe. Rest knowing your daughter survived, thrived, and turned pain into purpose. All my love, Terry. I sealed the letter and drove to the cemetery. Placing it on their grave, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness for Marcus, but freedom from the weight of unforgiveness. I could acknowledge his humanity without accepting him back into my life. I could hope for his redemption without participating in it. I could close this chapter without malice but with firm, permanent boundaries. The sun set as I stood between my parents' headstones. Tomorrow, Truth Forge would help more families. I'd create new code, solve new problems, build new connections. But tonight I simply stood in the peace of acceptance, accepting what was lost, what was saved, and what would never be again. Sometimes the most powerful forgiveness is the kind you give yourself for surviving, for boundaries, for choosing your own peace over someone else's redemption. That's what I gave myself as I left the cemetery, permission to move forward without Marcus, without guilt, without looking back. The letter of forgiveness I'd written wasn't for him. It was for me. And it said simply, I forgive myself for saving myself. That was enough. That was everything. 10 years had passed since that night Marcus told me to sit by the trash where I fit. A decade of transformation justice and building something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. Today we were celebrating the grand opening of Truth Forge Technologies' new global headquarters, a gleaming tower built on the very lot where Marcus's failed neural sync building had stood abandoned. The morning sun reflected off the glass facade as hundreds gathered for the ceremony. Families we'd helped, employees who'd become family investors, who'd believed in ethical innovation, journalists who'd followed our story from the beginning. The crowd was diverse, international, united by a shared belief that creation should be celebrated, not stolen. I stood before the entrance looking at our centerpiece installation, a golden trash can 3 feet tall, positioned prominently in the lobby. The plaque beneath it read, "Know your worth." Sometimes what others discard becomes the foundation for something extraordinary. Sarah joined me now, not just CFO, but co-CEO, her twins playing at her feet. 10,000 RSVPs, she reported, including some surprises you should know about. Good surprises or complicated ones? Both, she admitted. Kelly has the final speaker list. Kelly Martinez, our head of Global Victim Services, approached with her tablet. The documentary team is here for the 10-year retrospective. 3 Nobel laureates whose work was protected by our protocols. The President's advisory team on intellectual property reform. And she hesitated. And Brittany Chen Marcus's ex-girlfriend who first tried to expose him. She's running for district attorney on a platform of prosecuting white-collar crime. She wanted to thank you personally for inspiring her career change. The morning progressed with tours of the building. Each floor represented a different aspect of our mission. The second floor housed free legal services for families dealing with exploitation. The third contained our research labs where former victims now led innovation teams. The fourth was our education center, teaching families how to protect their intellectual property while maintaining healthy relationships. Ryan found me on the 5th floor, our investment division, where ethical funding met promising innovation. He'd married 2 years ago to Amanda Richardson, the architect, whose cousin had stolen her designs. Their partnership, both personal and professional, had become legendary in sustainable building design. The numbers are staggering, Ryan said, showing me the latest report. Truth Forge has helped recover $2 billion in stolen intellectual property, protected over 10,000 families, and prevented an estimated $5 billion in potential theft through our education programs. It's not about the numbers, I reminded him gently. It's about each family protected each creator, validated each innovation attributed correctly. He finished with a smile. I know, but the numbers help us reach more families. Patricia arrived with the morning's legal briefing. At 82, she showed no signs of slowing down. Dennis Mitchell died this morning, she said quietly. Heart failure in his cell. He was 78. I felt nothing. Then a slight sadness, not for Dennis, but for the waste of a life that could have built instead of destroyed. Did he ever show remorse? Never. His last interview, he still claimed he was a visionary who understood resource optimization. He died believing his own lies. And Marcus? I asked, though I'd kept my promise not to maintain contact. Exemplary behavior, teaching fellow inmates. completing his third degree. His parole hearing is next year, and rehabilitation officers say he's likely to be approved. He's apparently developed a curriculum for teaching ethical coding to at-risk youth. I nodded, feeling the complex emotions his name always stirred. Pride that he'd changed, sadness for what we'd lost, firm resolution that our paths would never cross again. The ceremony began at noon. Elena Vasquez, now our head of biotech innovations, and having reconciled with her daughter after years of therapy, served as master of ceremonies. She welcomed the crowd with warmth that belied the pain of her journey. 10 years ago, I thought I was alone, Elena began. My daughter had stolen my life's work, and I believed suffering in silence was the price of family loyalty. Then I learned about Terry Mitchell, a woman who refused to accept that narrative, who stood up and said no more. Today, we celebrate not just a building, but a movement that saved thousands of families from suffering alone. Speaker after speaker took the stage, former victims who'd become leaders, FBI agents who'd dismantled the Harvester Network, legislators who'd passed new laws protecting family intellectual property. Each story added another layer to the tapestry of transformation we'd woven from tragedy. James Chen, whose game engine had been stolen by his brother, unveiled his latest creation, an educational game teaching children about healthy boundaries and intellectual property rights. It would be distributed free to schools worldwide, funded by TruthForge's education initiative. Amanda Richardson presented the building's architectural innovations, all designed with sustainability and transparency in mind. Glass walls between departments symbolized our commitment to openness. Solar panels and wind turbines made us energy independent. The top floor was a greenhouse where employees could grow things, a reminder that creation, not extraction, was our purpose. When my turn came to speak, I stood before the golden trash can, memories flooding back. The humiliation of that night, the broken champagne glass, the moment I decided to fight back. Marcus told me to sit by the trash where I fit. I began my voice carrying to the farthest corners of the lobby. He meant it as the ultimate dismissal that I was worthless, disposable, fit only to be discarded. But trash is just another word for resources we haven't learned to value yet. Compost becomes fertile soil. Recycled materials become new structures. What's discarded by one person becomes treasure to another. I gestured to the building around us. Every brick in this building was paid for by recovered stolen assets. Every innovation protected here was once dismissed as worthless by those who stole it. Every person working here was told at some point that their gifts didn't matter, that their trust was weakness, that their love was leverage to be exploited. We proved them wrong, not through revenge, but through creation. Not through becoming like them, but through becoming everything they said we couldn't be. We took their trash designation and turned it into transformation. The crowd was silent, absorbed. I saw tears on familiar faces, determination on new ones. The Harvester Network taught that families were resources to be mined, that love was weakness to be exploited, that creation without theft was impossible. We've spent 10 years proving the opposite, that families thrive with boundaries, that love includes protection, that creation is the only true source of value. I pulled out a small device, my latest invention developed in the quiet hours when coding still brought me peace. This is TrustChain, a blockchain-based system for attributing and protecting intellectual property within families and small teams. It launches today free for anyone who needs it. Because protecting innovation shouldn't require wealth. Maintaining family trust shouldn't demand legal expertise. Creating safely shouldn't be a privilege reserved for those who can afford it. The demonstration showed how family members could collaborate while maintaining clear attribution, how ideas could be shared without fear of theft, how trust and verification could coexist. My parents died trying to protect me from exploitation. They couldn't have imagined their sacrifice would protect thousands of other families. But that's what happens when you plant seeds of justice. They grow into forests of protection. I moved to the ceremonial ribbon. This building stands where Neural Sync Solutions was meant to launch a company built entirely on stolen innovation. Today, we reclaim this ground for creators everywhere. For every person told their gifts don't matter. For every family member who loves without enabling exploitation. For everyone who knows the difference between creating and stealing. The ribbon fell away and the doors opened fully. The crowd surged forward to explore, to connect, to celebrate. But I remained by the golden trash can, running my fingers over its polished surface. A young woman approached hesitantly. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Sophie Warner. My sister is harvesting me, taking my bioengineering work and claiming credit. Our parents say I'm being selfish for complaining. I don't know what to do." I saw myself in her eyes, the confusion, the pain, the self-doubt that comes when family betrays you. "You're not selfish," I said firmly. "You're valuable. Your work matters. Your boundaries are valid. Come upstairs. We'll help you protect your innovations while navigating the family dynamics. You don't have to choose between your work and your family, but you do have to choose yourself." As we walked to the victim services floor, more people approached with similar stories. The work continued. It would always continue. As long as people created, predators would try to steal. But now creators had protection support and proof that speaking truth led to justice. The day progressed with workshops, presentations, and connections. The biotechnology lab announced a breakthrough in sustainable protein production, led by Elena's daughter, who'd spent years earning back trust and now worked under her mother's mentorship with proper attribution. The coding bootcamp graduated its 100th class of formerly incarcerated students, all taught by volunteers who'd transformed their own pain into purpose. As sunset approached, I found myself on the roof garden looking out over the city. Ryan and Amanda were planting something in the greenhouse. Sarah was video calling her twins. Elena was teaching a group of young scientists about ethical collaboration. Kelly was counseling a new family through their first steps toward protection. Jennifer Walsh arrived with a final surprise. "Someone sent this for you. No return address, but it's been screened. It's safe." Inside the package was a handcrafted wooden box. Opening it revealed a USB drive and a note for the girl who was told to sit by the trash and instead built a throne of truth. "From those you saved, who save others now." The drive contained thousands of video messages, families reunited after establishing boundaries, innovations properly attributed, children learning to protect their gifts while maintaining love. Each story a ripple from the stone we'd thrown 10 years ago. Patricia joined me as I watched her presence comforting as always. "Any regrets?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "Pain sometimes, sadness for what was lost, but no regrets. Every choice led here to this building, this mission, these people." Marcus telling me to sit by the trash was the cruelest thing anyone ever said to me. It was also the catalyst for everything good that followed. And if he contacted you again, he won't. He knows the boundary is permanent. That's his gift to me, respecting my need for distance. And my gift to him is the knowledge that his sister survived, thrived, and turned his cruelty into kindness for others. We're connected by history, but separated by choice. That's how some stories end, not with reconciliation, but with acceptance. As the celebration continued below, I remained in the garden, grateful for the journey from that marble foyer to this rooftop. The trash can in our lobby would remind every visitor that value isn't determined by others' perceptions, but by what we choose to build. Tomorrow we'd help more families, protect more innovations, teach more boundaries, build more bridges between creation and protection. But tonight, we celebrated the transformation of trash into treasure, pain into purpose, betrayal into a movement that changed how families understand trust. The girl told to sit by the trash hadn't just refused, she'd built an empire of truth where everyone discarded by exploitation could stand tall, where every creator knew their worth, where families could love without enabling theft, where innovation thrived in the light of attribution and respect. to everyone who's been told you're worthless. I whispered to the wind, knowing somehow the message would reach those who needed it. You're not trash. You're treasure waiting to be recognized. Create something, protect it, value it, and never let anyone convince you to sit anywhere but the seat you've earned through your own gifts. The golden trash can gleamed in the lobby below, transformed from insult to inspiration. And somewhere in the distance, families were learning to love with boundaries, create with protection, and thrive with truth. The circle was complete. The trash had become treasure. The story that began with cruelty had become a legacy of kindness, and every day forward would add another chapter to the book of transformation we'd written together. What would you do if someone you trusted told you to sit where you fit, especially if that place was beneath them? Have you ever had to rebuild your worth after someone tried to destroy it? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember, your gifts matter, your boundaries are valid, and you deserve to be valued for who you truly are. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' opinions. Together we can build a world where creation is celebrated and trust is protected. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes what others discard becomes the foundation for something extraordinary. You are that something extraordinary.